Good morning. Hello. Hello, my friends. And it is Monday. Happy Monday. It is Monday, August 12th. And thank you so much for coming to spend part of your day with me. See, there was already a boarding pass given out. I was watching the chat. Ay, what is it? What is it? Laren, thank you so much for jumping in here with the early morning super chat. It's not really early. It's 11 p.m., 11 a.m. on the East Coast, which makes it early morning in Las Vegas, where our new trial is going to be convening soon, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. They're supposed to start jury selection today, and they have some matters to take care of at 1 p.m. Pacific time, which is 4 p.m. Eastern. And I just don't know if it's going to be broadcast because I haven't seen anybody put up a stream yet. So hopefully it will. I know that Law and Crime and Court TV are going to broadcast the trial, so why wouldn't they? I don't know. Thank you, Laren, for your super chat. And little Miss Red Velvet, who's been a member for a month, says, just want to say thank you, mods in chat, and me for getting me through some tough times. Best channel on YouTube. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And welcome back to Sarah and Schwalk and Hora. There was already two. I must have missed that. I was outside and I had to drag myself back in here because it's a beautiful day today. Finally, we had a whole bunch of rain this week. Finally, the weather is good. Finally, we have a new trial to cover. The Rob Tellis trial. Telly's trial. Tellis out of Las Vegas, Clark County, Nevada. This has everything we need as a palate cleanser. For those of you who watched the Karen Reed trial with me, the Ashley Benefield trial with me, both of those trials were emotionally draining. And many of us were heavily emotionally invested in them. And this is going to be one that is a palate cleanser. And we have a judge that is reminiscent of Cyndi Lauper. She's amazing. We have a defendant who's a lawyer, and who doesn't hate lawyers? And he was also a public official. He was the county public administrator for the Clark County, Nevada. He was apparently a horrible boss, a toxic boss. His employees dubbed him Boss Baby. He was so toxic that one of the women that filed a lawsuit against him, which we're going to look at today, we're going to look at the civil suit because it's going to give us some information as to what was going on behind the scenes, how horrible they thought he was. He's going to give us examples of horrible things that he did to them allegedly. And it's because of those horrible things that he did to them, allegedly, that Jeff German, it's spelled German, German, but it's pronounced German. Jeff German was contacted. He was an investigative reporter for the Las Vegas Review-Journal. He was a career investigative reporter for something like over 40 years. And he wrote some articles about Rob Tellis. They were not very flattering. And not only were they not very flattering, but they accused him of having an affair with a coworker. And the women in the office were so suspicious of him having an affair with this coworker that they went to a shopping mall and they set up a camera or a phone. I'm not sure how they recorded it. And they have some video of Rob Tellis and his subordinate getting out of the back seat of her car after a meeting in her back seat. We looked at, this is part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, I've linked it in the description below. We looked at that video last time. We looked at some court proceedings. And what's fascinating about this trial is that typically we don't hear from the defendant at all. Karen Reed, we did not hear from at all, except for, I think she did a Nightline interview. Dateline, Nightline, I can't remember which at this point. And she would say a word or two to reporters on her way out of the courthouse. Ashley Benefield said next to nothing until her testimony. I think she had given one very short interview to something else like Dateline or Nightline. But this guy, Rob Tellis, egotistical man that he is, represented himself for a while in this case. And so there are a lot of oral arguments. There are a lot of court appearances where he speaks quite a bit. And we looked at some of them the other day. I have some more of them pulled up for you today. So we're going to get a good indication of who this guy is, a glimpse into his personality. He swears he's being framed by law enforcement, and he swears he's going to, he says he's going to testify. And I can't wait. I'm here for it. I am here for it. This judge is fire. She's really cool. This defendant thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. And it's going to be fun because it's going to be a lot, I think, lighter. And to a lot of us, it seems like a slam dunk. So he's allegedly stabbed Jeff Garman to death on September 2nd of 2022 outside Jeff Garman's Las Vegas home in broad daylight. It was something like 11:18 in the morning. It was caught on Ring camera. But while Rob Tellis could not be identified through the Ring camera because, get this, in 110-degree heat, he was wearing a long sleeve orange reflective shirt, jeans, gloves, sneakers, and a giant sombrero type straw hat. And when the police obtained a search warrant, they found inside his home a cut up straw hat, cut up sneakers that looked like the one the person was wearing, and the same duffel bag. Oh, the person was also carrying a duffel bag. And there's that. In addition to DNA of Rob Tellis being found under the victim, Jeff Garman's fingernails. So this is going to be good because he swears he's being framed by law enforcement. And I have a little clip of an argument that he made to a judge about who he thinks framed him and why. Actually, I don't know if he's saying law enforcement framed him or a local real estate firm framed him. But he didn't do it. It wasn't me. It's like the Shaggy defense, right? It wasn't me. And this is also a First Amendment case because after Jeff Garman died, the defense made a motion to obtain all of his electronic devices and to be able to go through his electronic devices. And of course, the Las Vegas Review-Journal came in and said, look, just because he's dead doesn't mean his sources aren't protected. He's a journalist. And so after much back and forth and litigation, it was determined that the Las Vegas Review-Journal could go through Jeff Garman's devices and turn over what they thought was relevant to this criminal case without revealing his sources. So we have some First Amendment issues in here too. Yeah. Yeah, Patty. It's a lot of people think, but that's why this is going to be a great trial to watch. Yeah, Mel. Of course, a man like Tellis would accuse everyone and their dog for framing him. Yep. Yeah, and we looked at some body cam footage the other day on part 1 of this series in which Rob Tellis's wife had called 911 and claimed that he was assaulting her back in 2020. And we looked at the body cam footage of that, and it was wild. And again, blaming everybody but himself. He seemed like he was hammered. And today we're going to watch the entirety of a Jailhouse interview that he did with a reporter where he's going to try and explain away some of his behavior, not only during that incident, but, for his toxic workplace behavior and all the sad things that happened to him as a child. He was a fat kid, apparently, and, drank too much and tries to explain his behavior away in every way, but taking accountability. Sound familiar to anyone? Bernie's saying, thank you so much for tuning in from Australia. Is the saying an attorney that represents themselves as a fool for a client still a thing? 100%. 100%. And there's nothing worse than a lawyer on the witness stand because invariably they think they're smarter than everyone else and a step ahead of everyone else. Thank you for your super chat. And this is going to be fun. Here's Jilly Bean, who's back from watching the Olympics. Hope all is well. Thanks. Thanks for being a member for 2 months. Kimbers, Ohio is a member for 3 months, is thanking me for everything. Thank you for everything. Without my members, I wouldn't have a channel. And hit the subscribe button. It's free. And it helps my unofficial competition against Vinnie Politan in subscriber count on YouTube. And I think I'm only 5,000 behind him. So hit that subscribe button. It's free. Shelby says, what? Says, thanks for covering this. And free Karen Reed. Karen Reed, there was a radio show this morning that was talking about Karen Reed, a local Boston radio show. So that That was interesting. I listened to a little bit of it, but I don't know if it was recorded anywhere, so I don't know if you can find it. So why tell you something that you can't find out about? First thing I want to talk about today is the judge. Let's take a look at the judge. And of course, it didn't come up right away, but I'll find it for you. Her name is Michelle Leavitt. She's been on the bench for 22 years in Clark County. Oh, is today going to be a slow internet day? I'm not happy already. Come on. Oh, I know what if you sent it to me, so let me see if I can pull it up another way. Oh, yeah, it's going to be a slow internet day today. It's not going to be great, but we're going to do the best we can. Even though I'm plugged into Ethernet and pay for the highest speed available from Fios. Not a fan. Not a fan. Okay, let's take a look. Her name's Judge Michelle Leavitt, and this is an old photo of her, but I am loving this. I am loving her personality, loving her her snark. And this is like 80s glory. Look at this photo. Love it. The big hair, everything about the 80s that we remember and love. This is Michelle Leavitt, and she sits in Department 12 in the Clark County Court System. This is, I believe, the eighth judicial district in Clark County, Nevada. Check it out. Is that amazing or what? Like, she's like, I was so fire that I'm not even going to change my photo. And she looks totally different now because we're going to look at a little bit of footage of her. This is Michelle Leavitt. She's a pistol. She has a voice like Cyndi Lauper. She's awesome. She's been in office since 2002. She was born in 1965 in Las Vegas, Nevada. Graduated from Las Vegas High School in 1983. And the University of and UNLV, 1987. Judge Leavitt graduated from California Western School of Law cum laude in 1994. She was a member of the Law Review International Law Journal. That's pretty impressive. Upon graduation from law school, she began work with the law firm of Alverson, Taylor, Mortensen, and Nelson and Sanders, where she gained considerable experience in medical malpractice and other forms of civil litigation. In July of 1998, Judge Leavitt became a sole practitioner, specializing in a broad range of criminal defense and civil litigation matters. In January of 1999, she was appointed by unanimous vote of the city council to fill a vacancy on the municipal court. Judge Leavitt was reelected twice to her seat in 1999 and 2001. And then in March of 2002, Judge Leavitt submitted an application for an open district court seat. The court was a gubernatorial appointment, and in May of 2002, Governor Kenny Gwynn appointed Judge Leavitt as a district judge in the Department 12 of the 8th Judicial District Court. Judge Leavitt was sworn into office on May 10th of 2002. So she's been on the bench for 22 years. She's a mother of three, member of the State Bar of Nevada, Clark County Bar Association, Nevada Judges Association, and she serves on some other as such committees. There she was. I don't know if this is from 2002 or if this is like even further back. She's amazing. You know what else she did? Any of you guys know who Chili DeCastro is? Call me Alice, which is why Alice is sometimes up here in the corner, because I fall into a rabbit hole and down the rabbit hole I go. Call me Alice. Chili DeCastro is a YouTuber. And I had not heard of him before. Trust me, I'm only a year into this YouTube game, so I don't know all the YouTubers, but calls himself a constitutional law scholar, an auditor. And I think his thing is that he goes out and films police officers making traffic stops and other arrests in order to protect their rights. And he was arrested in Las Vegas and thrown into jail for 4 months. He recently got out of jail. And this judge overturned his conviction. So I just want to play a little bit of that for you because I thought it was so interesting. Because if you guys follow Chili DeCastro, then you may know about this. But if you don't, then you may have no idea what I'm talking about. Thought I would give you just a little bit. If you weren't here for part one, you can see a little bit of her spice as we put her up on the screen during that appearance, which was just July 10th of 2024. It's going to give you a little insight as to her personality.
Is this Mr. DeCastro?
It is in custody.
Okay, he is present, he's in custody. The attorneys can state their appearances.
You are Christopher on behalf of Mr. DeCastro. Did you want to sit down?
No. But you can sit down if you want. You don't have to stand up throughout the whole hearing. It's up to you. Might be a minute.
Alexander Chen on behalf of the state of Nevada.
It's interesting how in this courthouse they have the defendant sitting back here in the gallery. They don't let him sit at the defense table. He's cuffed, he's shackled. And here's what seems to be a more recent picture than the one on the court website of her, but again, very different from what she looks like now. Less hip. Now she's more hip, I think. This is the video from Chili DeCastro's dismissal of his charges. His appeal was granted and his conviction was overturned, and he was released from jail on this day. So I'm just gonna.
You're being unconstitutional. He does say it. You can't do this to me. Call your supervisor. But they get him in handcuffs, and there he says.
This is wild. I watched the body cam footage of this, and he was literally just like videotaping with his phone a traffic stop of a woman in Las Vegas, and this cop did not like it. I mean, I think his shtick is also that he wants to, expose police corruption. I don't think he's done anything on the Karen Reed case, which is interesting, but he's out there filming them, and he's allowed to under the law, and he cites the law, and he knows all the cases. And this is interesting. So this is right when she dismisses his charges. So let's just take a quick listen to this.
By the way, the state didn't ask for him to sit there. Agnes Lexus asked for a suspended sentence, and Judge Zimmerman decided to give him the maximum. He's been in there 4.5 months for this. And I kind of wonder.
So that characterization is it's not a maximum. It's 3 months on each count consecutively.
Right, yeah, it's
Oh, you're right. Okay, you're right. I stand corrected. For whatever reason, I guess misdemeanor 6 months, 6 months. Yeah, so she gives it. But the state didn't ask for that. They asked for concurrent 90 days suspended. It goes to show what really happened. There were so many different errors, and I can tell the court has.
Yeah, so they appealed his sentence. I think he was in there for something like 4 months. Let's see when she just makes her decision. This is interesting. And he talks about how, listen, when the cop told him to, move away, like it was, the body cam footage was wild. I don't know if anybody saw it. Yeah, he did get charged because of his big mouth and his gestures. But the cop actually takes a step toward him and just says, get up against the car. And he really wasn't doing anything other than saying some not nice things about the police officer. But again, First Amendment.
Wrong. So some false allegation by some crazy lady, okay, it helps them sometimes. And also sometimes
The issue is not that there was need
reverse the convictions.
Okay, here she goes.
This time,
the case law. I just want to point out that distinction, but otherwise I have nothing else.
okay, so this time the court's gonna grant the appeal and reverse the convictions, based on its First Amendment protected conduct. And Mr. Orm, you can prepare the court.
yes, ma'am. Thank you very much, Jonathan.
That's it. She said, at this point, I'm going to grant the appeal, overturn the conviction, and he needs to be released.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was what the judge did. This judge, Michelle Leavitt, did 4 months ago for YouTuber Chili DeCastro. Overturned his conviction. He was released from jail after spending 4 months there. And again, I didn't know who he was until I started getting into my rabbit hole and looking it up. So there's that. One of you guys pointed it out to me in the comments. So thank you for that. I appreciate you so much. Cyndi 2.0. Yep. She gives Nancy Grace. Don't even say that. I don't want to think about that. I'd rather think of her reminding me of Cyndi Lauper for some weird reason. I don't know why. But I prefer that. All right, let's take a look at the civil suit against him, against Rob Tellys. Now we're going back to the Rob Tellys case. That is just the judge. So we wanted to get a taste of the judge. Yes, I thought so. I thought this was thank you, Sarah. Good morning. Good morning, Danielle Alexander. Yep, Patty Minko. So refreshing to see a judge ruling from the bench, unlike Judge Beverly Cannoni. Yeah, I don't know how long that decision's going to take. Could be a month, could be a week, could be 3 months. Who knows? Who knows how long that's going to take? But not ruling from the bench unless it's about her recusal, right? Okay, so after this lawsuit wasn't filed until May 17th of 2024 against Rob Tellys and Clark County, but the women, I believe, are absolutely probably going to be called as witnesses at the trial. So let's take a look at the allegations against him and against Clark County. And this is the behavior that gave rise to the beef between Rob Tellys and Jeff Gehrman. Jeff Gehrman wrote articles about this. We're going to take a look at those articles as well. But we're just going to get a little bit of background on this. So this is a federal lawsuit that was not filed until May of this year, 2024. But a lot of this behavior goes back to when he took office in 2019. So this is the lawsuit. The plaintiffs are Jessica Coleman, Alicia Goodwin, Noreen I'm not going to be able to pronounce that, Pagdagnan, and Rita Reed against Robert Tellys and Clark County. And this is the civil complaint. So they go through jurisdiction and the parties to the action. And then these are the allegations against Rob Tellys and him being a horrible boss. I'm going to just briefly read you some of this because it's 25 pages long and I don't think we need to read the whole thing. But all of these plaintiffs worked for the defendant Clark County in the public administrator's office prior to 2022 and for various lengths of time. So just to break from the document for a second, Rob Tellys was the elected public administrator of Clark County. The public administrator administrates estates for people who die either without a will or without any heirs, or there are estate issues where they need to have an attorney appointed to represent the estate for whatever reason. So he is also an attorney. So Jessica Coleman worked for Clark County in 1998 and the PAO, which is the Public Administrator's Office, in 2016. Alicia Goodwin worked for the PAO starting in 2017. Noreen worked for the PAO starting in 96. And Rita Reed worked for the PAO starting in 2007. In November of 2018, defendant Rob Tellys was elected as public administrator for the defendant Clark County. He formally began working in his role as public administrator in January of 2019. All of these women worked underneath him. And it goes through what each woman's duties were in the office, which we don't really need to get into, but it seems that Rita Reed was the assistant public administrator, and she had all of these duties, including supervising staff, et cetera, et cetera. Coleman was an estate technician. It goes through her duties. Goodwin worked as an estate coordinator, and it goes through her duties. And I don't know why I didn't highlight this. Sometimes when you highlight it, it highlights everything, and that was pretty lame. And Noreen was the senior estate coordinator. And then it goes on to say, Tellis exhibited concerning behaviors almost immediately and targeted the plaintiff specifically. His behaviors extended and intensified over a period of 3 years, during which he intentionally and constantly intimidated, influenced, embarrassed, humiliated, degraded, and isolated the plaintiffs. Tellis used his power and position over the plaintiffs to unlawfully discriminate against them, as well as to harass and retaliate against them for reporting his behavior by creating a hostile work environment. Tellis was aggressive towards Reed, purposefully isolated her from others in the office, discriminated against her, harassed her, and purposefully humiliated, degraded, and intimidated her. Tellis made numerous and consistent comments about Reed's age, including calling her an old-timer who did not want to get on board with Tellis's new policies and procedures. In reality, Tellis had made clear early on that no other PAO employees were to report to Reed or even seek her help. Tellis emphasized this in early 2019 by barging into Reed's office, slamming his hands on her desk, and yelling, "I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off. No one answers to you anymore." After this outburst, he left. Over the next 3 years, Tellis specifically instructed PAO employees not to talk to Reed, not to ask for her help, and would demand to know the subject of any conversations that Reed had with other employees. This became so bad that Reed began telling PAO employees who approached her that it was not a good idea to talk to her. In another instance, Tellis called Reed into his office and accused her of spying on him by going through papers on his desk. Tellis told Reed that he had her on video doing so. Knowing that she had not gone through Tellis's papers or even entered his office when she was not there, Reed told Tellis to show her the video. Tellis stated that he did not have the video on him at the moment and never produced the video, nor made any formal complaints about his baseless accusations. I'm going to break from this for a second to say that I had my spidey senses went up when we started watching that body cam video of the domestic incident and some other, things that he was saying in court, that this guy was a little bit paranoid, and I hadn't read this complaint yet. And now it makes it even more so to me that he may have been a little bit paranoid for whatever reason. So that is part one of him being a horrible boss to Reed. He also would yell at her for trivial issues and intended to intimidate and humiliate her. It's important also to point out here that these women were all county employees, and so he really didn't have the ability to fire them. It's really hard to get fired from a government job. And, government jobs are great. They're not jobs you want to lose because you get a great pension, you get great benefits. And this guy just came in there and really was a big bully, according to this complaint. They're just allegations at this point, but it gets worse as we go along. And this is the next plaintiff. Her last name is Coleman. Tellis was also aggressive towards plaintiff Coleman and took great measures to isolate, intimidate, influence, and humiliate her. That is my cursor on your screen, so it's not a fly. If you're watching on the TV, please do not break your TV and send me a bill. Thank you. As a result of her job, Coleman largely worked alone in an area known as the Vault. The Vault contained the possessions of deceased persons, which were being held by the PAO until either next of kin took ownership or the items were sent to auction. Coleman's job duties and how to complete them were clearly outlined in various policies and were extremely strict. This was necessary due to the nature of collecting, storing, and being responsible for the property of others. Initially, Tellis took advantage of Coleman's isolation by using it to be inappropriately close to her. Tellis would enter the vault when no one else except Coleman was there and would sit so close to her that they were almost touching, or positioning himself in a way that left her trapped until he left. Says he would consistently yell and intimidate her. At one point of June of 2022, Tellis entered the vault and began berating Coleman. His face turned red, and Tellis continued to yell at Coleman, getting closer to her as he did it. Eventually, Tellis backed Coleman up against a fence in a way that kept her from being able to leave and grabbed her arm. Tellis was less than a foot away from Coleman at this point. Coleman genuinely feared for her safety and took great lengths to avoid Tellis whenever possible. It's important to note that the first article that Jeff Garriman wrote was in May of 2022. So this was after these articles started being published. And now Tellis seemingly is ramping up his behavior against these women who were complaining to a reporter about him. Coleman genuinely feared for her safety and took great lengths to avoid Tellis whenever possible. Tellis further isolated Coleman away from the other plaintiffs by changing her schedule to make it so that her break and lunch times were different than her coworkers. This was one of the ways in which Tellis tried to keep the plaintiffs from talking to one another. Tellis publicly reprimanded, yelled at, and humiliated PAO employees who he caught in quotes, caught talking to each other during the workday. Tellis's no talking policy seemed to apply most strictly to these four plaintiffs. Ironically, during this time period, Tellis would frequently pull PAO employee Roberta Lee Kennett into his office, where they would spend anywhere from 15 minutes to several hours with the door closed. Breaking from the document to tell you that Roberta, her name is Roberta Lee Kennett, is the one who is seen in video getting out of the backseat of her car, and he's getting out of the other side of the backseat of her car where they were having a meeting because Rob Tellis said he was confiding in her. PAO employees, including Reed, could hear the two giggling and talking. Tellis became particularly hostile toward Coleman following Coleman's involvement in a complaint filed against Tellis by fellow plaintiff Goodwin. Coleman served as a witness to Goodwin's complaint, which she made to both defendant Clark County's Human Resources Department and its Office of Diversity. Upon information and belief, Tellis knew that Coleman was a witness against him and fueled his increased discrimination, harassment, and general cruelty toward her. In another incident during March of 2020, Tellis entered the vault area when Coleman was alone and proceeded to get extremely close to her. Tellis scolded Coleman for isolating herself and not eating lunch with the other plaintiffs, despite this being made impossible by Tellis's change to Coleman's schedule, as well as to the general policies and procedures of her job. Tellis leaned within inches of Coleman's face and told her that she would die alone, and no one would find her for a long time if she kept this behavior up, just like the cases they received in the office. Sounds like the horrible boss, right? Sounds like the horrible boss. And in the last video that we did, part 1, I linked the 48 hours full episode in there for you. These four women speak out in the 48 hours interview, so you can take a look at that later if you so choose. And it ramps up and ramps up to the point where Tellis is consistently dehumanized, degraded, and humiliated Coleman in an attempt to assert power and influence over her. Tellis's behavior towards Coleman became so bad that Coleman began to experience suicidal ideation and even picked a location in which she planned to hang herself. Specifically, Coleman chose the PAO vault because she had hoped that the Clark County would... All right, I'm going to start that sentence again. Specifically, Coleman chose the PAO vault because she hoped that Clark County would then have to do something about Tellis's conduct. These feelings were compounded when plaintiffs, including Coleman, were continuously ignored and brushed aside by defendant Clark County after making numerous complaints regarding Tellis's behavior. Plaintiff Goodwin personally made 2 complaints against Tellis to the defendant Clark County as a result of his atrocious behavior and treatment towards the plaintiffs. So these women tried to do this every way possible, complaining to the county. The county wouldn't listen. And then they found Jeff Garriman, a reporter, an investigative reporter for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and he listened to them. And if you watch the 48 hours piece, this woman, Ms. Coleman, cries while she's relating this story about how she planned to hang herself in the vault so that he would have to find her and know what a horrible boss he was. And they tried everything and nobody would listen until Gehrman was the first person who would listen to them, and they felt so validated. And I think they feel responsible for his death, if indeed his death was caused by the defendant, Rob Tellis, who, of course, is innocent until proven guilty. And then it goes on to detail some inappropriate behavior toward plaintiff Goodwin, including touching the small of her back, stroking her arm, brushing hair away from her face, blatantly staring at her breasts, waiting until they were both in the confines of an elevator to become physically close to her, making inappropriate statements about how she smelled and looked, and generally being physically close to her in a clearly unnecessary and inappropriate way. Goodwin rejected Tellis's sexual advances, which contributed to the shift in Tellis's behavior towards her from seductive to hostile. Goes on to say Goodwin was not the only PAO employee whom Tellis made sexual advances towards. Upon information and belief, Tellis made sexual advances and behaved inappropriately with many younger female PAO employees. Those who did not return the interest were isolated and treated with hostility, which fostered a clear divide within the public administrator's office. Mainly, however, this consisted of Goodwin and Coleman. And then it goes on to talk about a bit of religious discrimination that was experienced by Goodwin. By Tellis, it says, additionally, in early 2019, Tellis learned that Goodwin was a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, LDS. Almost immediately upon learning this information, Tellis began treating Goodwin with hostility. Tellis's behavior became even more hostile towards Goodwin at that point, and he would make comments stating that Goodwin knew people in the, quote, Mormon mafia, end quote, and he was scared of who she might know and what they could do to him. This hostile treatment caused Goodwin to file her first complaint against Tellis in August of 2020. Okay, so this was August of 2020. Jeff Gehrman was killed in September of 2022. The first article published by Gehrman came out in May of 2022. So this goes back years before anybody would listen to these women. And this goes on and on. He made Goodwin to move. He told Goodwin she had to move all her things to the office's reception desk so he could watch her and who she spoke to during the day. He started stripping all of these women of their official duties. Denied her overtime. He was basically a tyrant, it sounds like, if these allegations are true. And then the plaintiff, Pagdanan, I'm just going to call her Noreen because that's her first name, faced similar treatment after serving as a witness to Plaintiff Goodwin's first complaint. She was offered limited opportunities to work overtime while employees who were less experienced were granted the chance. There's some more retaliatory discrimination that occurred when Clark County shut down pursuant to COVID protocols. The PAO office was only allowed to keep a few employees working in the office. Those employees not working in the office were placed on furlough. So none of them were getting paid except for whoever Boss Baby, as they nicknamed him, which is why Boss Baby's in the thumbnail. Why Boss Baby? Boss Baby would pick who was able to work during the shutdown, and it was not these women, and they will be testifying during the trial. I'm almost sure of it. I can't find the court documents. I can't find the file, because when you try and put Rob Tellis's name into the 8th Judicial District case search, hundreds of cases come up because he was appointed public administrator in so many cases. If anybody has that information and they can send me any of the documents, that'd be greatly appreciated. I know one of the mods, hello, Black Rose. One of the mods, Team Brittany, Albert's Bulkhead Doors is here. Little Cupcakes, good morning. Little Cupcake, good morning. If anybody can put the email in the chat, that'd be greatly appreciated, because this is a collaborative channel and you guys are so helpful so often. Goodwin made a complaint and regarding Tellis's continued and escalating campaign of harassment, intimidation, and now retaliation toward her and the other plaintiffs. Clark County again took no action in response to the complaint and utterly failed to protect the plaintiffs. Rather, Clark County informed Goodwin that the complaint was moot and therefore closed after Tellis was arrested. His arrest did not happen until September of 2022. So these women are suing for intentional infliction of emotional distress, retaliation in violation of Title VII, retaliation in a violation of NRS 613.340, sex discrimination, a violation of Title VII, sex discrimination in a violation of a Nevada revised statute, religious discrimination in violation of Title VII, religious discrimination in violation of Nevada law, age discrimination on behalf of one of the plaintiffs, federal and state, race discrimination, federal and state, hostile work environment, federal and state, XOXO. Lago Marcina Law is the law firm that is representing these plaintiffs in federal court in Nevada. And that case is winding through the courts. The wheels of justice turn slowly. It was only filed in May of this year. So we'll see where that goes. But I'm sure these women will be testifying. We are here for it. We're here for it. 10, 11, 12. Thank you for the 10. Says, I was framed. There's no way I left DNA when I was wearing all of that. Yeah, that's interesting, right? What does DNA get underneath his fingernails if he had the long sleeves on and the reflective orange vest or long sleeve shirt and the jeans? And that's interesting. Thank you for your super chat. Little Miss Red Velvet, thank you. Melanie, your channel and chat, keep me engaged. As I said in my first email to you about my tough journey with mental health, that I will learn how to change my name to the above. Done it. Jill R. Thanks, Jill. You did it. You changed your name. Well done. Congratulations. Thank you so much. And best of luck as always, and prayers up for your journey. Let us take a look at the articles Jeff Gehrman wrote. To cause all of this animosity. Before we do that, let's check in with the chat and see if you guys have any questions so far. Boss from hell. Boss from hell. Kev says his narcissism isn't going to make this an absolute corker. Yeah, this is going to be a good trial. SNS says, I'm glad they aren't dropping it just because he was arrested. This goes up to the top since it wasn't acted on when they reported. Just because he isn't there doesn't mean they shouldn't receive justice. 100%. 100%. They're not going to drop it. The county, the county was responsible for doing something about him, and they didn't do it. And nobody listened to their complaints. So I think it's a good case. Yep. Jules, this man just checked all the boxes, didn't he? Yep. We may have to make some new emojis for this trial as we go. Okay, so here is who Jeff Gehrman is. Let's talk. As you know, it's always about the victims on this channel. Here's Jeff Gehrman. See if we can get this a little bit better. There is a picture of Jeff Garman. And the Las Vegas Review-Journal website has him listed as a former reporter, which is very sad because he is no longer among the living due to, allegedly, his stabbing death by Rob Tellis. Says Jeff joined the Review-Journal in 2010 after a lengthy award-winning career at the Las Vegas Sun, where he was a columnist and a reporter who covered courts, politics, labor, government, and organized crime. He had a master's degree from Marquette University and is the author of the 2001 true crime book, Murder in Sin City. And then it lists a bunch of his articles here. And here are the ones involving the defendant, Rob Tellis. This is the first one. This was published May 16th of 2022. Let's play the video. I'm not sure what it says, but let's play it.
The Clark County Public Administrator's Office has been mired in turmoil and internal dissension for 2 years, with workers claiming emotional stress, bullying, and favoritism. Robert Tellis, who leads the office, has also faced allegations of an inappropriate relationship with a coworker, Roberta Lee Kennett. In an interview with Review-Journal investigative reporter
that's what
Jeff
got him.
Garman, Tellis disputed several complaints.
Okay. Do you see his walk? So when they released the video, and they'll probably show that video of the perpetrator, it was covered from head to toe with sleeves and pants and a giant sombrero-like hat. The cameraman recognized his walk because he walks with a slight limp, favoring one side, and pointed out to law enforcement that this may be him because he remembered filming this walk down the hall. So take a look. Here's the two of them getting out of the backseat of her car. Rewind that a little bit. This is the first article.
Tellis, who leads the office, has also faced allegations of an inappropriate relationship with a coworker, Roberta Lee Kennett. In an interview with Review-Journal investigative reporter Jeff Garman, Tellis disputed several complaints.
What is your reaction to the allegations from these employees that you have created a hostile environment in this office?
Yeah, I earlier introduced you to the other 7 team members, and they're folks who've all come with a great attitude, and they work hard. And together, them and I, we are what is making the difference with the performance of this office.
So the other women have a bad attitude, and that's why they made complaints against you? Do you see this? Do you see what he's doing? He's already blaming everyone else for his problems. You heard from 17 other people who have good attitudes. Or they're too afraid to speak out against you for fear of retaliation.
I've done my best to try to make everyone happy, but again, it's got to be within a certain framework. People just cannot get to do whatever they want, and it's unfortunate that, we've got some people who were here from before who are basically trying to railroad me. And again, you met those other folks, they're happy, they're dedicated.
They're trying to railroad me. Has nothing to do with my poor behavior. I wouldn't let them go to lunch together, and they're overreacting.
And we're just here to do a good job.
Tellis, who's up for re-election in the June primary, blames a handful of old-timers for claims about a hostile environment in the office.
Again, no matter what type of gestures I try to make to smooth things over, to make sure that they're happy, they just don't, it's nonstop. And again, like I said, it's hard for me to make sure that I am a cheerleader for the folks who are doing really good work when I've got these other folks who are constantly, surveilling me, constantly trying to sabotage the office.
They're trying to sabotage the office, and they're constantly surveilling. Do you see how he's taking zero responsibility for his actions? And the woman who is playing along by having backseat meetings with me at the shopping mall in her car in the parking garage. How dare they try and expose me for that?
But we're doing it, but it's hard.
Tellus denied
It's really
allegations of
hard.
any
It's really hard for him, not hard for the women, right? Old timers. That was part of the age discrimination claim by Ms. Reed. Yep. Accepting no bad behavior himself. Everybody hates me. Okay, so leave. Like he wants them all to leave, but he can't fire them because they're county employees. It's a government job.
proper relationship with Lee Kennett.
When you hear people raising these allegations,
Wait, let's just take that back because they're talking about his improper relationship with the backseat woman.
Raising these allegations about you and a quote, personal relationship that you have. What do you say to people about that?
Well, obviously, it's not true. I said I'm. All of my friends, all my family know how much I love my wife, and if you look at, obviously you can't talk to the people I deal with on a daily basis. But from my social media, from everything, you can see that I am about nothing but justice, fairness, and just being a good person. And it sickens me, it destroys me that somebody would even level like accusations like that, because I don't know, it's unreal. It's unreal the lengths that they're going to. They don't have any qualms trying to ruin my personal life to win this race.
What race? The re-election campaign? Do you have backseat meetings with everyone in your office and they're trying to ruin you? How about you ruining your own marriage? You can talk about how much you love your wife as much as you want. But I don't know if they're still together. Does anybody know if they're still together? If she ever filed for a divorce, if she's standing by her man through all of this? He's been in jail since his arrest in 2022, where he has served as his own lawyer for a bit of time. I'm sure he spent a lot of time in the law library, despite the fact that he is an attorney. We watched the other day the colloquy from Judge Leavitt as she tried to convince him not to represent himself, that it was not a good idea at all. And I thought she was very kind in that colloquy. However, he didn't, and he filed a motion for her to recuse herself, saying that she was biased against him and she was really mean to him. But you guys watched that with me, and he was very, I thought she was very kind to him. So, there's that. So this was investigative journalism piece number 1. And that was the video portion of it, but I'll read to you the written portion of it. From May 16th, 2022 by Jeff Gehrman. The Clark County Public Administrator's Office has been mired in turmoil and internal dissension over the past 2 years, with allegations of emotional stress, bullying, and favoritism leading to secret videotaping of the boss and a coworker outside the office. A half dozen current and former employees interviewed by the Review Journal are alleging the hostile work environment was fueled by the elected administrator of the office, Robert Tellus, carrying on an inappropriate relationship with a staffer that has harmed the office's ability to deal with the public in overseeing the estates of those who have died. The staffer, Roberta Lee Kennett, 45, has acted in some cases as an office supervisor, beyond her assigned duties as one of the several estate coordinators because of her favored status with Tellus, the employees said. Because of the brewing animosity, the top supervisor under Tellus, Rita Reed, decided to run against him in this year's Democratic primary. And several employees took the bold step of secretly videotaping Tellus and Lee Kennett meeting in the backseat of her car at a parking garage to show proof of their relationship. One employee filed a retaliation complaint with the county against Tellus on May 9th, records show. Here's the hidden video, which we can watch again because many of you did not see it the first time. So you can see there, and you can see the heads in the back seat of the car. And then you're going to see them. I guess this is her car because she gets out of the back seat and then gets into the front seat. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Hello, Lisa Graham. Mag lives in Vegas, and this story has been crazy. Yeah, Karen, I agree. Sick. His poor wife, the humiliation. Yeah. Wasn't thinking about her. You're saying his wife was very nice to him, Linda Lane? Trying to get him a lawyer? There's him getting out of the back seat during his confidant meeting. He is laughing and smiling as he's going to his car. She's getting out of the back seat, looking around and smoothing her dress down and getting into the front seat. I don't know. Could have been. Could have been. Could have been a confidential meeting where he was just confiding in her. Yeah, Rachel Henderson says, why am I so good? And they're so mean. Unreal. Yeah. Right? Scott, he only had 17 employees against him. It's not like it was 20. No, I think he's saying there were 17 employees who were on his side that they taught that were probably afraid to speak up. That's what I got from that. Maybe I misunderstood. So there's that hidden video taken by the other women in the office who are like, this is why she's all of a sudden a supervisor and I can't get overtime. The article goes on to say both Lee, Kennett, and Tellis, 45, an attorney, strongly denied having any kind of improper relationship, but acknowledged that they have become friends. Tellis said that he has relied on Lee Kennett's support while making office improvements resisted by employees from the previous administration. Both are married. Tellis blames a handful of old-timers for exaggerating the extent of the relationship and falsely claiming that he's been mistreating them. He said that they have filed complaints against him with the county in the past that were not substantiated, and he questioned the timing of the latest accusations as he seeks a second term in office. Quote, they are unhappy with the way the office has been taken out of their control, Tellis said. All my new employees are super happy, and everyone's productive and doing well. We've almost doubled the productivity in the office. Okay, so all of his new employees were apparently handpicked by him. Maybe they were his relatives. I don't really know. But nepotism is a thing in many county jobs. It's the truth. Sorry to break it to you. The office tension was felt during a recent visit as employees loyal to Tellis explained there are two factions. One group of mostly new workers hired by Tellis and the other group with ties to the former public administrator John Cahill, who retired in January 2019 after 12 years. Cahill, who endorsed Tellis in 2018, is now backing Reed and voicing concerns about the well-being of the workers. The office has 8 full-time employees, 3 part-time support staffers, and roughly 15 part-time investigators who spend most of their days in the field. When someone dies and there are no immediate family members to deal with the estate, the office takes possession of the property, and investigators attempt to locate relatives so the property can be turned over to them. Emotional stress claims. Members of the warring office factions say they have suffered emotional stress, which in some cases has impaired their physical health. Assistant Public Administrator Reed includes herself among those affected by the upheaval. Reed, who has worked at the office for 15 years, said she jumped into the race knowing she faces an uphill primary battle with Tellis on June 14th. Her office is right next to his in the building at 515 Shadow Lane. I came to this decision not very easily because it affects my life dramatically, Reed said, but I want to do whatever I can to let the voters know that this is not the right man to be in charge of any department. We're always on guard and we're always under stress. All of the people in this office deserve to be treated with respect and dignity, and the people we serve deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. Holdover staffers say they secretly videotaped Tellis and Lee Kennett after work several times, slipping into the back seat of her Nissan Rogue earlier this year in the shadows of a high-rise mall parking garage. Oh, so several times they videotaped them. So apparently there was more than one backseat meeting. Staffers say they recorded the clandestine meetings, plural, to offer proof to county officials of the meeting office dividing relationship. The Review Journal has obtained and viewed videos. The Review Journal has obtained and reviewed videos of the meetings. This is unacceptable, disgusting behavior for a public servant, a state coordinator Alicia Goodwin said in the confidential retaliation complaint. Physical contact with a subordinate in a public place and letting that subordinate use favoritism she's getting from these inappropriate meetings to secure power and privileges above others in the office is affecting most of the staff in an extremely negative manner. Tellis responded that Lee Kennett, who also worked under Cahill, is simply one of the people he could lean on. Well, he has tried to change the office atmosphere. He was just leaning on her in the back seat. Leaning on her. She was one of the old timers. Not old in age. I think they said she was 45. But she was old because she was with the previous staff under Cahill. He has said that he caught Reed spying on him in the past, an allegation she denied. Again, he sounds a little bit paranoid, but they did film him, so there's that. Both Tellis and Lee Kennett acknowledged driving separately to the parking structure at the Las Vegas North Premium Outlet Mall several times earlier this year and entering the backseat of her car. Oh, so they both admitted it to Gehrman. That's interesting that they both decided to speak to him. They said they just talked about the problems in the office and only hugged each other. They only hugged each other. Are you guys buying this? In the backseat of her car, several times they were videotaped. They both spoke to Jeff Gehrman and said they just talked about the problems in the office and only hugged each other. Okay. Right, Scott? They talked. Inappropriate relationship denied. Quote, I think it's horrible that they recorded this and they're trying to destroy my life and my marriage when I'm actually infinitely in love with my wife. Infinitely in love with my wife. Do you ever notice that the people who talk so about their relationships on things like Instagram and Facebook and about how much they love their wives and how amazing their husband is, they're always the next people to get divorced? You ever notice that? People who are so public about it. It's like they're making too big of a deal about it. I don't know, just an observation of mine. Tellis goes on to say, I was just trying to get things off my chest with somebody who understands, and now it's being framed as though I'm cheating on my wife. Lee Kennett added, I have not had an inappropriate relationship with him. I would not be friends with a man who thinks he's going to have an inappropriate relationship with me. Why are you sitting in the backseat of your car instead of in the conference room of your office? When asked why the duo didn't go to lunch or somewhere else less secretive to privately discuss work, Lee Kennett said they can't do that without someone in the office making assumptions about them. Wait. So you can't go to lunch together because people are going to make assumptions about you, but you think sitting in the backseat of your car together is not going to lead to any assumption making? Okay. She said she suggested going into the back seat of the car because she wanted to make sure Tellis would listen to her concerns face to face. Tellis said the meeting location, which is across the street from the Clark County Government Center on South Grand Central Parkway, probably was chosen out of, quote, paranoia because of the discord in the office. Wow. So now he's gotten her to say that it was her idea that they sit in the back seat of the car, not his. And he's calling her paranoid. That's interesting. Goodwin declined to comment about the claims of bullying and favoritism, but in her 19-page complaint filed with the Clark County Office of Diversity, she provided details of Tellis's relationship with Lee Kennett, the videotaping, and his alleged micromanagement of the full-time workers. Quote, the county has failed to protect employees from a mentally and emotionally abusive situation that has continued now for 2 years plus, and the mental and physical health ramifications have been felt by most of the full-time employees in this department of only 8 full-time employees, Goodwin wrote. Goodwin, who's been with the office about 5 years, also alleges in the complaint that Tellis is discriminating against her because she's Mormon and has retaliated against her since she filed a discrimination complaint with the county in 2020. Tellis denies those allegations. According to her new complaint, staffers first saw Tellis and Lee Kennett getting close to each other in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. He moved into a cubicle next to hers. Then they began taking walks and having lunch together. Lee Kennett also was observed having numerous closed-door meetings with Tellis, where they were heard giggling. No other employees were allowed inside his office, which only has windows with a view outside the building, the complaint says. Quote, Lee Kennett has since acted with assumed authority, power, and privileges since the two began their personal relationship. Goodwin wrote in her complaint, their behavior has very negatively affected most of the others in our department. The county spokesman declined to comment on the complaint, saying it was a personal matter, and Deputy County Manager Jeff Wells, who oversees the Public Administrator's Office, was not made available for an interview. Because Tellis is an elected official, the county has no authority to discipline him, but it does monitor how employees are treated. Yeah, but they didn't do anything about it. Health of employees questioned. Former boss Cahill said he's worried about the impact the alleged bullying is having on employee health and their dealings with the public. These employees talk daily with people who have lost a loved one and their families, he said. It's an emotional, stressful job, and to add a hostile work atmosphere to it is unacceptable. Cahill was also critical of the county's failure to stop the alleged abuse. They're being harassed and the county doesn't seem to care, he said, and I just think that's nonsense. These employees are still county employees who have the rights of county employees. They're not his private employees. Some holdover staffers interviewed by the Review Journal cried while sharing details of their troubled work environment. Some asked to remain anonymous out of fear of retaliation. According to the workers, Tellis has a temper and demeans holdover employees. He assigns them unnecessary work and has set unrealistic performance goals, won't respond to questions they have about their changing duties, and tries to dig up dirt on them. He tries to dig up dirt on them? He also prohibits them from using cell phones at work and discourages them from socializing and gossiping in the office. Anyone who questions his authority is chastised, the workers said. The employees contend they are constantly worried that they won't properly follow his sometimes confusing directives and could be reprimanded or verbally abused. One worker says she eats a bag lunch every day in her car because she doesn't want to be seen socializing with staffers who aren't among Tellis's favorites. This sounds like the job from hell. Anybody ever have a job from hell where you just get up in the morning and you dread going to work every day? That's what this sounds like to me. Janelle Lee, a part-time investigator, said the office environment is one of the worst she has ever seen. Lee has her own live event company and has spent years putting on entertainment events on the Strip. He literally works to create division in the office, she said. He's so vindictive and so horrible. Everybody looks like they're in a CYA situation all the time. People are depressed. They're physically ill. One staffer told me, I'd rather have a colonoscopy every day than come here and deal with him. Wow. Janie Osuzik, who worked as an executive assistant for 4 public administrators for over 30 years, said she retired in April because she got frustrated with the hostile environment. Quote, you always had to be on guard, and it made the office uncomfortable because you knew there were certain people who would run to tell us on everything, even with lies, and he would accept it as true, she said. He would storm into my office and accuse me of things, and never take the time to investigate anything. She said she once got so stressed that she had to take leave to deal with migraines. Quote, those of us who were not in his favor felt that we weren't appreciated, even after all of those years of working in the office, she said. It was a miserable place to work. Reed says she has dealt with headaches, stomach aches, and depression under what she calls constant browbeating by Tellis. This stupid thing keeps jumping because of these dumb pop-up ads. When you beat people up, there's only so much energy and services they can provide, she said. You spend so much time combating these challenges and accusations and reprimands, it knocks you into the gut. It's like, here we go again, another lie, and you have to try to protect yourself. Reed is also convinced that the relationship between Tellis and Lee Kennett is responsible for the office conflict and has contributed to Tellis's efforts to strip her of much of her administrative duties. His relationship with her is harmful to the operations of the office, Reed said. She had become more and more powerful and noticeable. If she didn't like something, boom, she'd be marching into his office and there would be some change. Tellis disputes the claims of hostility from Reed and the other veteran employees. Quote, "These allegations that I've chained people to the wall or something are bogus," he said. "They make it sound as though everybody's miserable in the office. I've done my best to try and be nice and friendly this whole time. For whatever reason, they just seem to want things to go back to the way they were, serving the interests of a few. Before I got there, this office was in a horrible, horrible state." Among the changes Tellis said he made are closing estate cases faster and cutting back on large amounts of tax-funded overtime employees were getting under Cahill. He provided a document that showed one veteran employee received more than $140,000 in overtime between 2017 and 2018. That was on top of the employee's combined $150,000 regular salary for those years. That employee's overtime dropped to roughly $13,500 in 2020 under Tellis, according to the document. Lee Kennett, who sits in a cubicle similar to other estate coordinators and employees, said the disgruntled staffers are responsible for creating the drama. Oh my God, she's defending him. Listen to this. She says, "Rob is walking on eggshells because of all of them. We all are," she said. "There's no accountability on their part." They're like two peas in a pod, these two, it sounds like. Rob is walking on eggshells because all of them, we all are. She's walking on eggshells too after her backseat meetings with him. Okay. It's not everyone else in the office walking on eggshells because of you two and your relationship and him being a toxic boss. Okay, got it. Nicole Lofton, an estate coordinator for the past year, said the old guard acts like a little gang and has tried to isolate her. Lofton said she suffered from migraines from stress. "They told me from the beginning to pick a side," she said, adding that Tellis does everything he can to help her succeed while the other group wants her to fail. Ariana Payne, another Tellis loyalist who works as a full-time office assistant, said she has seen the increased production of the office. "The office is running a lot smoother," she said. "We're closing a lot of cases." But she said she's also seen a definite divide. "There's talk of them versus us, and it shouldn't be that way. We have a duty to do." Alicia Goodwin provides details in her retaliation complaint of what employees claim they saw when they observed Tellis and Lee Kennett at the Premium Outlets parking structure between February and March. "We were then able to take photos and videos from afar," Goodwin writes. "We also were able to secure several instances where they meet up in a parking garage, driving separately in their individual vehicles and staying from 1.5 to 2.5 hours on each visit." Okay, and then they go on to describe the video that we just watched. It says, "We're being put through all of this because he's having a private thing," one employee said. "I don't think he should be allowed to run a county department. He's mismanaged so many things. This is a horrible abuse of public trust." And then Jeff Gehrman leaves his email and phone number and Twitter handle in case anybody wanted to follow him or contact him with any further information. And that's just the first of 4 articles that Jeff Gehrman wrote about Rob Tellis. But as you can see, he gave both sides of the story. He talked to Tellis and he talked to his alleged confidant. And he got the story from people who were the old timers that worked in the office for a long time and the new timers who just came to work in the office. And that is the motive, according to prosecutors, for Rob Tellis allegedly stabbing Jeff Gehrman to death in September of 2022, which is less than 4 months after that first article was published. Mel Stiller said, but she allowed it to happen to get what she wanted. Jenny says it sounds like a fair journalist. I mean, this is why, being an investigative journalist can be so dangerous. I mean, this is just an example. I mean, look at what's going on in Massachusetts. You've got people like Aidan Carney and Howie Carr exposing what they think is some internal police corruption. And it's a dangerous job. It's a dangerous job. Granny Annie is traveling again. Hi, Granny Annie. Says, imagine having to keep him happy and the angry staff. She can't win. Patty says, I hope. His wife has divorced him by now. I don't know. Dragon-Eyed Thief says, I think some of his favorites felt like they had to keep the facade or were told to go along with it. Not all of them, but some are a form of victim too. I think so too. It sounds to me like a toxic workplace environment. John says he's too sexy for his shirt. Yeah, he kind of is, right? So in 2020, we looked at this the other day. We looked at the body cam footage from this arrest. But in 2020, there's a great news channel in Las Vegas, and I like to go to local news channels when I cover cases because they're so much more invested in it, and they do such a deep dive. So KTNV Las Vegas 13 Investigates has done a great series on this case. They've done some great reporting on it. And I think they broke this story of the DV arrest in 2020 for the body cam footage that we watched the other day. And they report that according to the arrest report from Las Vegas Metro Police, Tellis's wife, Marianne Ramirez Ismail, told officers that on the night of February 29th, 2020, she and her husband had gone to the Bellagio. While there, Robert became very intoxicated and they got into an argument. They decided to go home. She drove and the argument continued in the car. It became physical when Robert grabbed her around the front of her neck. She said she could still breathe and kept driving while he started trying to break things in the car. Trigger warning for anyone who is a survivor. I know there are many of you in the chat. Take a deep breath. He's trying to choke her while she's driving. And then he's trying to break things in the car. I don't know what was in the car that he could have broken, but that's what he started trying to do, allegedly. At one point, he hit her arm in the steering wheel, causing the car to swerve, but they did make it home. Once inside the house, the argument continued. She told Robert to go to sleep, but he refused. He continued yelling and at one point said, "Kill me." That scared her and their two children so much that they barricaded themselves in a room. He broke into the room and chased them as they tried to get away. He kept yelling after she called the police. The report says he grabbed her in a tight bear hug, refusing her pleas to let go. The report says the force of the grab and Robert's demeanor frightened the children, and one of them grabbed Robert from behind and tried to get between them. When the police arrived, they noted that Tellis appeared heavily intoxicated. He told police he didn't know why they'd been called, and he didn't know why he was arguing with his wife. We watched the body cam footage, and it was disturbing. But he tried to keep arguing with her while the police were there. When an officer tried to move Robert into another room, he got into the officer's face and began yelling at him. When they tried to put him in handcuffs, he resisted by flexing his arms in front of his body. He then collapsed into a chair and said he didn't want to be handcuffed in front of his kids. He refused to stand up, so officers had to forcibly remove him from the chair and put him face down on the floor, where they had to pry his arms out from underneath him. They eventually got him in cuffs and took him to the Las Vegas City Jail. Tellis was released on his own recognizance the next day and was later able to negotiate a dismissal of the domestic violence charge. Think his wife dropped the charges? Think he had to go to some sort of what do they call it? Critical thinking class or some thinking class. They didn't call it anger management. They called it something else. For resisting arrest, he got a suspended jail sentence in lieu of taking a behavior modification class called corrective thinking. That's what it's called, corrective thinking. The corrective thinking class. After paying $418 in bail and following the court's stay out of trouble order, that charge was also dismissed in March of 2021. So there's that. And then he gave a Jailhouse interview. She tried to explain away some of his behavior during that domestic call. And this Jailhouse interview was from September of 2022, after he had been arrested and put in jail for the murder of Jeff Gehrman. So let's take a look at that. Yeah, that's the thing. Bayou Baby keeps getting away from everything, no accountability. No, there's never any ramifications for this guy's behavior, so why should he change? And we see that a lot with so many criminals. Thank you. I'm going to put the, I'll scroll that along the bottom. Thank you, Team Brittany, for reminding me. There is the number for the National DV hotline, should anybody need it. 1-800-799-7233, which is also 799-SAFE. Thank you, Team Brittany, for that. Let's take a look at this Jailhouse interview, where again, he tries to blame everybody else for his behavior, except for himself. Shocking, right? I need to go off screen for a minute, so I'll full screen this for you, and I'll be right back.
You know when you're wrong. All right. First off here, can I have you say your name for me?
Yeah, I'm Robert Tellis.
All right, Robert. First question here. What is your reaction?
Oh, if you don't mind, I'm sorry. My apologies. I know we didn't really kind of get into this, kind of jumping into it, but I really, frankly, want to just, if I can, as I've spoken with other folks from the media, I'd like to speak about this domestic violence issue that's come out in the news.
Yeah, what do you have to say about that?
So, I've tried to live my life doing good by others. I've always done that. Unfortunately, I have ADHD, and with that comes a tendency to go overboard when it comes to, eating things, or when I was a little kid, I was fat, and when I got older, when I started drinking, I would drink one drink, but one would turn into a dozen before I knew it. I just would drink until I blacked out, and for a long time, and then of course I didn't drink every day. It's
Right away, he's here explaining himself. This is what a true narcissist does, right? Blame everybody but themselves. I was a fat kid. I have ADHD. I drank too much until I passed out. Yep, he says he has ADHD. I just want to take that back because I had to send a quick text message, but let's rewind it and listen to it again, because this is a glimpse into who this defendant is, and you don't often get this before trial, but we're here for it. And I think this is a reporter from KTNV, which has done a great job on this, and he actually landed this Jailhouse interview. He's going to blame everyone but himself. He was a fat kid. He has ADHD. He's an alcoholic. Here we go. Whoa, poor me.
You know when you're wrong. All right. First off here, can I have you say your name for me?
Yeah, I'm Robert Tellis.
All right, Robert. First question here. What is your reaction?
Oh, if you don't mind, I'm sorry. My apologies. I know we didn't really kind of get into this, kind of jumping into it, but I really.
He won't even let the reporter ask the first question. From jump, he wants to control this conversation. He wants to control this interview. And he's like, here's what I want to say. I want to say some things before you ask me a question even.
I frankly want to just, if I can, as I've spoken with other folks from the media, I'd like to speak about this domestic violence issue that's come out in the news.
Yeah, what do you have to say about that?
So, I've tried to live my life doing good by others. I've always done that. Unfortunately, I have ADHD, and with that comes.
Unfortunately, I have ADHD. This is how you're explaining choking your wife in the car in a drunken rage. ADHD? Okay.
A kind of tendency to go overboard when it comes to, I guess, eating things, or, when I was a little kid, I was fat. And when I got older.
When I was a little kid, I was fat. So my ADHD had to do with eating things. Okay.
Older, when I started drinking, I would drink one drink, but one would turn into a dozen before I knew it. I just would drink until I blacked out. And for a long time. And then, of course, I didn't drink every day. It's on those days where I would drink, I couldn't control myself. If I had one, I had to have a dozen, and I'd black out, not knowing what I did the next day. And
did you black out during the stabbing of Jeff Gehrman? Asking for a friend. I mean, it was 110 degrees in the shade, and you were wearing a lot of clothes. But apparently a lot of people who live in Nevada have said that that's the way landscapers dress, because typically it is cooler, believe it or not, than having the sun beating down on you in 110 degree heat. But okay.
I tried to tame it. I wanted to be like everybody else. I wanted to be like people who could have one or two drinks and not black out. And so I did that for quite a bit of my adult life. So whenever I'd go out to functions or whatever, I would, unfortunately, by the time I got home, I'd be blacked out.
Okay, so he was blacking out at social functions and all the time, and that's his excuse for choking his wife, is because he was blacked out and didn't remember it the next day. So somehow it's the monster inside of him. The monster came out and he's not responsible for it. Okay.
Regretfully, one night a couple of years ago, when I blacked out, it scared my wife and it scared my kids. I did.
It was her fault, right? You hear that? It scared, when I blacked out, it scared my wife and it scared my kid. It, not me, it. I blacked out. I had nothing to do with it. It scared them. They're the ones at fault here. Just listen to his word selection. It's cringe.
Didn't hurt them, but I scared them enough to call the police on me. And after that day, I stopped drinking. I said, I'm not perfect, and I just wanted to try to, I just want to try to do my best and be the best person I can be. And so I just wanted to explain what occurred with that domestic violence charge.
Yeah, that night in 2020.
I didn't hurt anybody. They were just scared. The lack of accountability.
20. Since then, how was your relationship with your wife since that point?
It's good. It's good. We're talking every day. I've frankly, we actually had plans for the whole family to go to Life is Beautiful this weekend. We had the tickets for the 5 of us.
We had the tickets. We have a great relation to, I don't know what Life is Beautiful is. Maybe somebody out there in Nevada can enlighten me. But, we were going to go. We have tickets for this Saturday. All 5 of us were going to go together. We have a great life. But alas, poor me. I'm in jail right now for something I didn't do.
We have a great relationship. She forgave me for that, and things were going well.
Well,
we're still close, me and my wife and I.
So what do you have to say for the charge you're facing now?
Wait, we're still close? Me, my wife, and I? We're still close? Me, my wife, and I? All 3 of us? Does he have 2 personalities now too? Oh, the monster, and now the guy who allegedly hasn't had a drink since 2020. After that, it's a music festival? Thank you. Listen to this. Me, myself, and I. My wife, myself, and I.
We're still close, me and my wife and I.
So what do you have to say for the charge you're facing now?
And unfortunately, I can't comment on it, obviously, given that it's ongoing, and I hope you understand.
Are you able to talk about you and your wife now? You guys work together?
Again, we have a wonderful relationship. I mean, obviously, things are a little difficult to hear with respect to working together per se, but we love each other very much. And
well, how would you describe your relationship with Gehrman?
I didn't have a relationship with Mr. Gehrman per se, so.
Did you ever try to work with him on any stories in the past?
Like, he won't answer the question of whether or not he killed him. He won't even, like, he's like, oh, I didn't have a relationship with him per se. Like, he's distancing himself here from the victim, but he did talk to him for at least that first article that we just read. I think there were 4 articles altogether. Let's listen to that again.
Well, how would you describe your relationship with Gehrman?
I didn't have a relationship with Mr. Gehrman per se, so.
Did you ever try to work with him on any stories in the past?
No, sir.
I guess DNA evidence and certain evidence found at your home, linked you to this. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I can't comment on the case. I'm sorry.
Have you talked with your wife since you've been arrested?
He's referring to the cut up straw hat, the sneaker that was cut up into like 100 pieces. We looked at that the other day, and on the Ziploc bag and the duffel bag that the perp was seen carrying in the surveillance video. Did they ever find a murder weapon? Does anybody know? I mean, call me Alice, but I didn't get that deep into it. I didn't see any mention of a murder weapon. If anybody knows, let me know. He was stabbed 7 times.
Yes, I have.
And what are you able to say what you've told her?
Wait, is he talking about his wife? Hang on a second. Oh yeah. What did you say? Have you said anything to your wife? Oh yeah, let's just bust into the spousal privilege right away. See if we can get it in some other way.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Have you talked with your wife since you've been arrested?
Yes, I have.
And what are you able to say what you've told her?
Again, obviously I love her, and just talking about family.
What would you say to those past allegations of a hostile work environment and sexual misconduct in the workplace?
I've laid all that out on the website. It's false. And, the work that we did in that office was very important, very good. We did have a lot of accomplishments. We were able to change laws to support families in probate. The office was running very, very well. And unfortunately, there were some folks who just weren't happy with the changes because it affected their pocketbooks. And it's unfortunate the way that the things went down.
Did you murder Jeff Gehrman?
Again, sir, I cannot comment on the case in any respect whatsoever, sir.
Did you murder Jeff Gehrman? I don't know. Some people think that if somebody's innocent, they will say, absolutely not. I absolutely did not. Not him. No comment.
What was your role at the county? What was your day-to-day job?
As a probate administrator for probates where families are not stepping in, either because they haven't been found or because they'd like for us to handle those cases for them.
Are you aware that Rita Reed did an interview with ABC?
I've heard, but again, I wouldn't have any comment on it.
So no reaction to Rita Reed talking to ABC about this
ABC, was that the 48 Hours interview? I think so.
whole situation?
No.
Is there anything you want people to know about you?
Just really, again, that I am someone who is human. I've all my life tried to do great work for people. I used to volunteer, donate.
I'm human. Anything you want people to know about you, I'm human. He's going to talk about his charitable contributions, his philanthropy. Generally try to help people.
I just generally try to help anybody who needed my help. And so that's who I am. If anyone wants to believe otherwise, that's their choice, but I'm just somebody who's trying to do his best to be a good person.
What is your reaction to this whole thing? I mean, you being arrested, these allegations you're now facing. What is your reaction to this and Gehrman's murder, and just in general?
Again, I really can't comment on it. I'm sorry.
Can you talk about if you plan to plead guilty or not guilty?
No, I'm sorry.
Do you have any message today for your family?
They know that I love them very much, and my friends as well. That's pretty much what the message is. That I do love them so very much.
What was your initial reaction to hearing about Jeff Gehrman being murdered?
Again, I unfortunately can't comment on it.
You can't mention anything about Gehrman whatsoever?
Right.
Have you worked with him at all in the past? And on any stories in general?
No.
Second time he asked that question.
Previous stories that he had published, obviously you read them and you tweeted about them and everything. And you obviously had a reaction from them, thinking he was going through your trash at some point. What do you say about all of that?
Yeah, we looked at his tweets, and he made some, obviously public tweets on Twitter or X, whatever they're calling it now. I call it Twitter, and I always will. I don't like change. Tweets about Jeff Gehrman going through his garbage. Again, the paranoia. I don't know if Jeff Gehrman was really going through his garbage. He's got 3 kids, apparently, Debbie. And family knows that he loves them.
Again, my apologies, but I really can't comment on it.
So that 2020 domestic violence, we just saw the body camera footage yesterday, and it appeared that you were arguing with police and intoxicated, and you did face a resisting arrest. Have you?
I'm trying to move the captions so that we can see his mouth, but they're not cooperating with me.
What is your reaction knowing that body cam footage is now out there and people are seeing the actions that happened in it?
Again, I frankly hadn't seen it. I don't know what I was doing. I blacked out. So I was not in control. I don't know medically, scientifically, what exactly was in control, but I was not conscious.
Wow.
And I think people have.
Wow, the wide awake out. If you know, you know. People black out and they're wide awake and they don't even know that they're blacked out. And now he's going to say he's never seen that body cam footage before. It wasn't me, Shaggy. Wasn't me. I was blacked out, so I have no idea what I did or what I was doing or what I was even thinking. Let's take that back a second. That's what we do here. I frankly hadn't seen it. So until the press got a hold of it, he hadn't seen that body cam footage because why would he? His case was dismissed. He didn't even go to corrective thinking classes. He paid $418 and was let out of jail. Almost free. Really, considering.
Again, I frankly hadn't seen it. I don't know what I was doing. I blacked out. So I was not in control. I don't know medically, scientifically, what exactly was in control, but I was not conscious. And I think people who have drinking problems understand what I'm talking about. I don't know that someone like yourself has ever experienced it, but frankly, honestly, the first that I heard about my actions with the police was here today, with an earlier news station. So I had no idea the extent of what had happened. And again, that is obviously one of the reasons that I quit drinking.
And talk about that. You said you quit drinking. Have you not drank since then, or do you drink a little bit, or what's that? What's your relationship like with alcohol now?
I don't have one. My wife and I had a flute of champagne for our anniversary, but I don't drink anymore. Again, the costs were just, and the risks were too high.
Do you know what happens with your position?
So he's claiming he hasn't had a drink since 2020 when this incident happened. I think we said February of 2020 before the panty. He's claiming he hasn't had a drink since then. That'd be interesting to see if some people come out and say he's still a drunk. I don't know.
Now at the county?
I do not.
Have you been in talks with the county at all about what's next?
I have not.
So at the county, is someone else overseeing your job, or do you know anything about that, or has that kind of been pushed to the side?
The work is ongoing. Absolutely.
Are you able to do any of the work from there, or is it all no longer working on it?
I don't know if I'm not sure. That anyone's interested in any of that. Frankly, I'm sorry.
I just, for the record, I mean,
he did try to remain public administrator while incarcerated. Tried to convince them that he could still do his job from jail, but he was removed.
So you basically don't want to comment at all on the charge you're facing now and why you're in jail.
Correct. Again, I don't know if I'm sure you understand that obviously there are, while this thing is working its way through the legal process, it's, I can't comment.
I mean, is there anything that you want the public to know, though? I mean...
Okay, wait. Anything you want the public to know? MD says, how often has anyone been found not guilty because they drank and blacked out? Dumb excuse. Well, what he's claiming, that was his excuse for the DV charge that we watched body cam footage from in part 1 of this series. And that's what he's saying. The excuse was for that, not for the murder that he's charged with. He's got a different excuse for that. He thinks he's being framed. We're going to play that interview in a second. He's not out of jail. He is still in jail. He's been there for almost 2 years.
We're here talking to you, and I'm sure that...
No, I understand. And again, like I said, I've made my statement, and I hope you understand. Again, I know that, I've got to take the advice of attorneys and just not speak about the situation,
Yeah.
He fired 3 lawyers, then he represented himself for a lawyer, and now he has a lawyer, Robert Draskovich, who is apparently a prominent attorney in the Las Vegas area. It's going to be good.
All right. So what is your moving forward? Can you talk about your plans in court Tuesday?
No, I cannot. I'm sorry.
Is there anything you want anybody to know about where you might have been when this happened, Big Airman?
Again, I can't comment. I'm sorry.
You didn't think of your alibi yet. He's like, can you tell us where you might have been when Gehrman was killed? Let's see. It said government. That's why we try not to follow the closed captions, but it does give us some fun sayings like motions and lemonade. So.
No, I cannot. I'm sorry.
Is there anything you want anybody to know about where you might have been when this happened to Gehrman?
Where you might have been when this happened to Gehrman?
Again, I can't comment. I'm sorry.
Do you? I don't know if you can comment on this, but do you think that the motives? Can you see why these motives kind of put you in this position? The police kind of say about these articles and such.
Yeah, no, same again. I'm sorry, I can't comment.
Anything else you want anybody to know about you and the situation or anything?
No, sir, thank you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your patience.
All right, this is your last chance to say anything with us.
No, I understand. I, again, just wanted folks to know that, again, I'm just a guy who's trying to do his best.
So you can't answer whether or not you had murdered Jeff Gehrman?
I, again, cannot comment on the case. I'm sorry, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
This goes all the way back to shortly after his arrest in September of 2022. And that was a great interview by KTNV, local Las Vegas news channel. He's been there ever since. Yes, he's a lawyer, Kim. Doesn't he realize that doesn't look good? Apparently not. I mean, sometimes, lawyers tend to think they're the smartest person in the room. That's why he fired 3 of them and represented himself for a while. They are not. They took the death penalty off the table. They do have it in Nevada, Marcia Smith, but they took it off the table for him, and I'm not really sure why. I have not dug into it deeply enough, the pretrial stuff. That's why we're going through some of it now. On January 17th of 2024, our defendant claimed that a real estate firm framed him for the reporter's murder, Jeff Garman's murder. Let's take a look at that because that's a bit interesting. And also during this, he was representing himself at the time. This was after the judge tried to convince him not to represent himself. And this is a court appearance that he made trying to convince this judge not only why Michelle Leavitt, the judge who's currently assigned to the case and was back then as well, should have recused herself, but also that a real estate firm framed him for Jeff Garman's murder. So let's take a little bit of a look at this. Try not to follow the closed captions, but I'm putting them up anyway because the volume's not always great on these clips.
In custody. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
We have Mr. Hamner here from the state. Morning,
It's from January of 2024.
Your Honor. Good afternoon. I'm in the habit of saying good morning too. Mr. Tellis, this is on for your motion to disqualify Judge Leavitt. I have read your pleadings and Judge Leavitt's response, but I'm happy to hear anything else you want to tell me.
Great, Your Honor. Thank you. And so what
This is interesting because in Massachusetts, we saw this too. We saw a motion in the Karen Reed case for the judge to recuse herself, and it was the judge herself, Judge Cannoni, who heard that motion to recuse herself, which she denied. In this case, in this state, in Nevada, a different judge is assigned to hear the motion to recuse. That's interesting to me. I think that's kind of the way it should be.
I'd like to do today is I'd like to go ahead and discuss the truth of what has happened in this case. And I hope that Your Honor allows me to finish everything that I've got to say. Because as Your Honor knows, one of the core principles of our justice system is the pursuit of the truth. Now,
I'm happy I want to hear the truth, but I see you have a big stack of papers in your hand. We don't have time for all that today.
Don't worry. I'm only going to speak to things that are absolutely relevant.
Okay, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Your Honor. So first I'll discuss Judge Leavitt's deep-seated favoritism, and I'll finish by discussing why she's engaging in this misconduct. Now, I understand that Your Honor might be inclined to grant or, to give her the benefit of the doubt. However, Your Honor, the misconduct that's occurred here is well outside the bounds of any reasonable doubt. Judge Leavitt, her favoritism is so deep-seated, she refuses to refrain from violating constitutional rights. And in turn, she's wasting taxpayer funds, and she refuses to acknowledge that as well. When, Judge Leavitt engages in intentional misconduct, often the resources of the appellate courts, additional resources of the state, and additional resources of the public defender are wasted. And that's not to mention when often those who are wrongfully convicted have to bring civil suits. Now, all of this comes out of the taxpayers' pockets, and given that Judge Leavitt has refused to stop violating constitutional rights, it seems she just doesn't care. And so what
I think what is important here is to point out that it's, this has got to stop. I'm making.
This has got to stop. This judge is not nice to me. We watched the hearing the other day where she tried to convince him not to represent himself. In my opinion, compared to some of the judges that we've seen lately, she was very nice to him. She did speak to Boss Baby kind of like he was a baby, but she was not mean to him at all.
Continue that. I want to talk about Waller v. Georgia. In Waller v. Georgia, the United States Supreme Court said that evidence suppression hearings are important means of both vindicating constitutional rights and also in fulfilling the public's interest in exposing police misconduct in our community. Now, here, Judge Leavitt willfully acted against these important interests by denying me a hearing because she knew that the hearing would expose police misconduct. Now, to show that a hearing is required, the defendant must show that there was a false statement, a misleading statement, or omission of an important fact in the affidavit that an officer presented to a judge, and that the judge granted that search warrant based on that information. A good analogy for this is the review of a disputed contract. Now, when a judge has to review a disputed contract,
Fairy Raven, somebody said the other day that he reminds them of Chris Albert, that he looks a lot like Chris Albert, and now I can't unsee it. Let me know what you think. This is interesting, though, because it seems like he spent a little bit of time in the law library. There's a law library in every jail. Spent a little bit of time there. This is when he was representing himself back in January of this year. Yeah, Team Brittany says, I'm serious. This guy needs to be friends with Sarah Boone. Somebody suggested the other day that perhaps he could represent her and she could represent him. Although they're not in the same state. Isn't Sarah Boone in Florida? Fortunately.
The judge will strike any unconscionable or otherwise illegal terms and then review the document to see if a contract still exists. As in the contract example, here, a reviewing judge strikes all unlawful probable cause statements and then reviews the statements that remain. If there is not substantial probable cause at that point, the search warrant is void and the fruits of the search are tainted. Here, I demonstrated that constitutional precedent required the striking of the majority of the statements in the officer's affidavits. I should have prevailed in obtaining that hearing, and at which I should have ultimately prevailed in demonstrating that the search warrants were void. However, Judge Leavitt did not like that outcome, so she willfully defied constitutional precedent that required the striking of those statements. But what Judge Leavitt did essentially was she ruled that when you took these illegal statements and you put them all together, that combined, they no longer violated constitutional law. Now, furthermore, Judge Leavitt had prior said that she would set that hearing as soon as the motion was filed. On the day that I expected that Judge Leavitt would set the hearing as she promised, Ms. Weckerly stopped my advisory counsel in the hallway before the hearing, and she told him that I would not be receiving that hearing. Then, in the hearing, just as Ms. Weckerly had predicted, Judge Leavitt decided to refuse me that hearing after all. The only logical explanation is that Judge Leavitt denied the hearing because Ms. Weckerly told her that there would be no avoiding the exposure of some, if not all, of the substantial police misconduct. Would an impartial judge defy controlling case law?
Okay, or you were just wrong on the law, representing yourself as a probate attorney. And she said to you, when she said you really shouldn't represent yourself, she said, counselor, I know that you're an attorney, but have you ever handled a criminal case? And he said, well, a misdemeanor, like a DUI or two. And she said, but this is a felony murder case. You're facing the rest of your life in prison. I really, really suggest that you don't. Do you know the rules of evidence? Do you know how to object? Do you know how many peremptory challenges you get? And he couldn't answer any of those questions. And yet still, she said, you have the right to represent yourself. I'm going to let you do it. But you're not entitled to standby counsel. We saw that also in Sarah Boone, for those of you following that case. And he did it, except now he does have an attorney now. So this is before.
And renege on a promise to set the hearing just to protect police officers from lawful accountability? No, but Judge Leavitt did. Early last year, I filed a motion to have Metro produce certain evidence that proves my innocence and also proves police misconduct. Metro filed a response, and they attended the first 2 hearings on my motion. The DA never filed a response, but was allowed to engage in oral argument at every hearing. And in their oral argument, the DA never cited the case law or statute. They only repeatedly made the false claim that Nevada law did not require the production of this evidence, despite the constitutional mandate for it. Now, of course, Judge Leavitt agreed with the DA as long as she could. Would an impartial judge allow an attorney who filed no responsive pleading to engage in substantial oral argument? No, but Judge Leavitt let the DA do that. Would an impartial judge defy constitutional precedent in favor of the DA's false claim about Nevada law? No, but Judge Leavitt did. And it is clear from Judge Leavitt's later actions that she knew the claim was false. After Judge Leavitt, the DA, and Metro stonewalled me on the evidence for several months, I filed a petition to have the Nevada Supreme Court intervene. The week after Judge Leavitt received my petition, she immediately held another hearing on my motion. Now, if Judge Leavitt really believed that she was lawfully withholding the evidence from me, why would she rush to hold another hearing on my motion? The answer is she knew it was unlawful. Now, and yet you will see that Judge Leavitt continued to collude with the DA and Metro to keep me from receiving evidence critical to proving my innocence and the police misconduct. When I was being taken to court that day, no one could tell me what the hearing was about. I didn't find out that it was about my motion until the hearing had already started. And only the Metro was only the DA was in attendance, not Metro. During the hearing, Judge Leavitt announced that the DA would be producing the evidence I was seeking and not Metro. And this was despite the fact that I had requested in my motion production by Metro with sworn certificates as to the completeness of the production. Now, when I reminded Judge Leavitt,
if you know, you know. But when he says Metro, he's talking about Las Vegas Metro Police.
Ms. Weckerly jumped in and declared that I had not served Metro, and that's why they were not there. Now, an impartial judge would have recalled that Metro filed a response and attended 2 hearings on my motion, but not Judge Leavitt. She immediately agreed that I had not served Metro. It was shocking to hear a judge absolutely disregard easily verifiable facts that are on the record. Now, prior to that hearing, there was no claim that Metro hadn't been served. Again, they had filed a response and they attended 2 hearings. Clearly, Judge Leavitt and Ms. Weckerly had an ex-party communication to come up with this ridiculous claim so that Judge Leavitt could order that the DA produce the evidence instead of Metro. Now, would an impartial judge do that? No, of course not. What difference does it make how I received the evidence? The difference is that by ordering the DA to produce it without sworn certificates, then the DA can lie about the evidence, and they did. Had Judge Leavitt actually granted me...
Yuri's math teacher, if you can make me laugh during the stream, you win. Says this guy is zipping himself into a suitcase right about now. This is interesting because Travis Williamson apparently practices or did practice in the Las Vegas area. Said that he knew Jeff Gehrman from some articles that he wrote about cases that you were covering, Travis, I guess, in the past. Says Judge Leavitt's a great judge. Don't know if this is replay or live. This is a replay from January of 2024 when he still represented himself. But he had no chance. At this. Disagreement with rulings isn't grounds to disqualify a judge in Nevada or any other state, really, 100%. He has to show bias against him or, as in the Karen Reed case, potential connection to some of the people involved in the case, some of the witnesses, some of the family members. But he wasn't going to win on this.
The relief I sought in my motion, I would not now, even 9 months after filing my motion, still be fighting for evidence of my innocence.
Fighting.
One of my requests was for the surveillance logs and videos of the surveillance that was conducted on me, including surveillance during the bribery investigation. Ms. Weckerly told me that...
Oh, there's a bribery investigation too. News to me. That's cool. Miss Wackerly is her name. Wackerly reminds me of like the weed whacker reference. The fact that he was dressed like a landscaper in his costume when he allegedly, or maybe didn't, or did, stab Jeff Gehrman 7 times to death. Weed whacker.
I was only surveilled 3 total times, and that there was only 1 video. However, it is clear that Ms. Weckerly lied based on information I found in items that were produced to me. In one of the surveillance logs that was produced to me, I found that the surveillance log referred to videos, plural. And that same surveillance log referred to surveillance that was conducted just the day before Mr. Gehrman was murdered, a day for which I have no surveillance log. Now, there's one reason, if not 2, that Ms. Weckerly lied. The first is that the videos show that I do not walk like the killer. The second,
I do not walk like the killer. So did he disguise his walk? That's your best case scenario. What about the cut up straw hat in your house and the cut up sneakers that look like the same sneakers the perp was wearing in the surveillance video? What about that? And the duffel bag that was found in your house that looks like the duffel bag the perp was carrying in or about the time of the stabbing.
possible reason would be that if Metro was tracking me as long as, for so long, there's a good chance that they know that I did not buy the items that the killer used in that crime. So it is unlikely.
He didn't buy the items that the killer used in that crime. No, but as someone pointed out before, town workers may wear those outfits and therefore he may have had access to them some other way. And just because they don't have a receipt of you going and purchasing a straw hat and other things that somebody was wearing in that surveillance video is not proof of your innocence or exculpatory, but okay, let's keep going.
Lawful and immoral for the DA to willfully hide evidence of my innocence, and no impartial judge would willfully assist the DA in its efforts to do so. Sadly, Judge Leavitt did, and there's no sign she'll stop. Despite a prior disqualification motion, despite a petition to the Nevada Supreme Court, despite a judicial complaint, Judge Leavitt is still now withholding constitutionally mandated evidence from me. Now, from the bench, Judge Leavitt outright denied me 2 sets of evidence, claiming that they were irrelevant. There was no logical, good faith reason for doing this because the evidence she denied me was similar in form and function to other evidence she did grant me. In my production motion, I requested emails between Detective Gaddis of the homicide investigation and Detective Jaffe of the bribery investigation. And Judge Leavitt granted me those. But I'd also asked for emails that were related to the drafting and the submission of search warrant affidavits. Facially, both of these requests were similar. They were emails. But why would Judge Leavitt grant the one but not grant me the emails from the affidavits? The only logical reason is that Judge Leavitt was likely informed that the affidavit emails were damaging to Detective Gaddis. And also the same can be said for the search warrants from the bribery investigation. Judge Leavitt allowed me only one of these search warrants. It was the one where Metro was given authority to track me by way of my cell phone. Judge Leavitt refused me the other 7 search warrants, declaring that they were irrelevant. However, they are relevant. Bribery is a financial crime.
Yes, bribery is a financial crime. Lisa Lamonda says his hearing is starting now, and I don't think so. I think it's starting at 1 p.m. Pacific time. It is 1 p.m. Eastern time. But if you have a feed of that, let me know. But my understanding is it's starting at 1 p.m. Pacific time, which is where Las Vegas is. And it is only 10 o'clock in the morning there. So if I'm wrong, let me know.
And it is very likely that Jackie's team sought the search warrants to go through my finances with a fine-tooth comb. So again, showing that this occurred would show that I did not buy the items of the killer used in the crime. This is again evidence of my innocence that was denied to me. So would an impartial judge deny a defendant evidence that likely has proof of his innocence while granting him similar evidence that is known to have no such material? No, but Judge Leavitt did. Judge Leavitt also facilitated the DA's courtroom efforts to harass me and make me appear clueless.
Harassing me into making me appear clueless. And I don't like when people make me look clueless or harass me. That's interesting that he chose the word harass, because that's exactly what at least half a dozen women who worked underneath him at the public administrator's office claim him of doing to them in the toxic work environment. We looked at the complaint earlier, if you're just tuning in now.
Attorney for the DA was allowed to directly ask me the following question. Just to be clear, he has all the videos of the neighborhood cameras picking him up when he killed Mr. Gurman, right? You've got those, right? At that point, an impartial judge would have admonished Mr. Hamner that that kind of conduct was inappropriate. What did Judge Leavitt do? She said, well, I'm assuming. And then from there, Mr. Hamner was allowed to continue questioning me, and questioning me in a way that made it appear that I didn't understand the difference between evidence that was produced and evidence that was seeking. An impartial judge would not have allowed Mr. Hamner to do that.
Oh, so he's mad. Okay. All right. I'm picking up what he's laying down. He's mad that the judge allowed the prosecutor to treat him in such a way that he didn't understand the proceedings, that he didn't understand the rules of evidence, and how dare he? And if she was impartial, she would have admonished the prosecutor, and because she didn't, she should recuse herself. This is the craziest, most ridiculous argument I've ever heard, maybe.
But Judge Leavitt did. In a later hearing, Judge Leavitt immediately pounced when I was asking a question that it appeared might be directed to the attorney for Metro. So from that, you can see that she knew it was improper for one party to directly question another, much less for Mr. Hamner's purposes. So Judge Leavitt has facilitated the DA's unprofessional, immoral, and unlawful behavior in this case.
Basically, the judge is letting them be mean to me. The judge is letting them be mean to me. Please take her off my case.
And the DA has returned the favor by protecting Judge Leavitt from exposure of her misconduct. Now, as a citizen, I have a lawful right to request information.
We have seen misconduct. We have seen misconduct, Rob Telley's Esquire. We have seen misconduct in a judge, and this ain't it. But you go on with your bad argument that you crafted so carefully in the law library of the jail, and we'll watch it get denied, and then you can tell us who you think is framing you.
From our government by way of Freedom of Information Act request, and I did. I requested from Clark County the appeal statistics for Judge Leavitt, and also emails between her, the DA, and Metro. Now, if any other citizen had made these Freedom of Information Act requests, then Clark County would have had to comply. However, Assistant District Attorney Christopher Lawley blocked fulfillment of my request, lying about the law and the nature of my request. In a letter blocking my request, Mr. Lawley cited to Tennessee and Ohio State court decisions to claim that items related to criminal discovery could not be requested by way of Freedom of Information Act requests. Never mind that even if the cases were applicable, the cases would not have given Mr. Lawley that authority to block my requests. There's also the fact that Tennessee and Ohio State laws do not apply in Nevada. And beyond that, the statistics and emails that I requested had nothing to do with proof of innocence or guilt. They were not related to criminal discovery. They were related to Judge Leavitt's misconduct. Mr. Lawley lied and knowingly violated my First Amendment right.
Wait, Mr. Lawley? Don't even tell me that there's a Mr. Lolly in this case. Is that what he just said? Lolly flop, ooh, lolly, 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 lolly flop, ooh, lolly, lolly flop, lolly flop. We haven't had a chance to do that in a long time. Bum, bum, bum. Hold on. Mr. Lolly? Oh, this is awesome.
They were not related to criminal discovery. They were related to Judge Leavitt's misconduct. Mr. Lolly lied and knowingly violated my First Amendment right to the information to protect Judge Leavitt from accountability. Now, this is further evidence of the improper relationship between Judge Leavitt and the DA. As you can see, there's no doubt that Judge Leavitt has a deep-seated favoritism because it has already resulted in numerous unfair judgments. Of course, I want to finish by discussing the why. So, and for you to understand, I have to go into just a little bit of background. You may or may not recall that, or you may or may not have heard that I believe that Compass Realty framed me for Mr. Herman's murder.
All right, here we go. I believe that I think it's Compost Realty framed me for this murder. So let's listen to what the theory of his case is going to be. I was just in Las Vegas, actually, Lisa, and it was 3 hours behind New York. I was there last week to see The Dead and Company at the Sphere in Las Vegas, and it was awesome. It was Jerry Garcia's birthday. If you know, you know, and it was 3 hours behind, so I don't know. I'm just saying what I know from being there last week. Perhaps someone, yes, 4 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, Joanna Matos. And Joanna, if you can tell me who's going to be carrying it live, because when I looked earlier, Law and Crime does have the video up yet. Okay, good. So what we will probably do when we're done with this little synopsis is we will take a break and I'll redirect us to a stream where we'll come back a little before 4 p.m. Eastern so that we can watch it together. Let's keep doing our catch up. Here's where he's going to talk about who he thinks is framing him.
I understand I have to go into just a little bit of background. You may or may not recall that, or you may or may not have heard that I believe that Compass Realty framed me for Mr. Herman's murder. Up until the day I was arrested, I was pursuing exposure of Compass Realty's thievery and probate cases. Compass Realty was opening cases to sell homes of the deceased to Compass Realty's partners at low prices with no public auction, so the partners could later sell those homes for as much as double.
Oh, Compass Realty. He's saying that they were colluding to buy the homes of people who had passed on. Maybe with a shell company? So they could make a profit. All right, well, this is an interesting theory. Let's listen to this again. Hold
on. Up until the day I was arrested, I was pursuing exposure of Compass Realty's thievery and probate cases. Compass Realty was opening cases to sell homes of the deceased to Compass Realty's partners at low prices with no public auction, so the partners could later sell those homes for as much as double. The money that should have been going to families was going into the pockets of these guys. Someone was directing that the homes be damaged before the appraisals occurred.
Oh.
So that these homes could sell to the partners for less. In a previous hearing, I mentioned the case of Recep Abdul. This would be in Judge Leavitt's courtroom. In that case, Compass Realty filed an inventory report that showed a date of death condition of the home that had photos of the home with no flooring and no kitchen. When I say no kitchen, I mean no cabinets, no counters, no sink, bare walls and a kitchen. And this is one of their MOs for reducing values of the homes. And again, Your Honor, you'll see the point of what I have to say here very shortly. And the person who was in charge of this, I believe, was a man by the name of Adam Fenn, an agent for Compass Realty. And that information will be relevant in just a moment. In early 2022, I approached DA Wolfson about opening a criminal investigation into Compass Realty. He referred me to Detective Jackie in the Public Corruption Unit at Metro. I met with Jackie, gave him my materials, and his team went to work. Not long after that, Jackie told me his team discovered that Compass Realty never reported personal property such as vehicle, jewelry, firearms, or other items of value, despite having opened over 200 cases. Now, Detective Jackie told me his team would be setting up sting operations, documenting the items of value that were in the homes before Compass Realty had a chance to clean them out. and of course, obviously taking appropriate action once they built the case. The day or so after I talked to Jaffe, I spoke to Mr. Wolfson and told him the good news. Mr. Wolfson said he already knew. He said that he and Jaffe are good friends, and that he keeps on top of all of Jaffe's cases because those are the big publicity cases. Now, after that, I didn't hear anything more, and recently I found out why I believed. I discovered that Adam Fenn of Compass Realty donated to Wolfson at the end of March 2022, not long after my conversations with Wolfson and Jaffe. Wolfson's first quarter 2022 contributions and expenses report that shows Adam Fenn's donation is available for public download at the Nevada Secretary of State's website. The donation is on page 4 of that report. Also available for download is my successor Rita Reed's second order report that shows that Compass Realty donated to her, and Adam Fenn also donated to her.
Oh, it's a whole conspiracy. Compass Realty is the one who's framing him for killing Jeff Garman. That's very interesting. Why would they want to kill Jeff Garman? Oh, I see, to frame him because he was going to uncover their scheme of buying up these homes of people, but they would first damage them and then they would buy them up without a public auction. When I was a young lawyer, there was a judge who would appoint me to go do the auctions on the courthouse steps in Nassau County, New York, and it was so fun. I would get to stand on the courthouse steps and do the public auctions of foreclosures and other homes that were being auctioned off. And there are people that just do this every day. They go to these public auctions on the courthouse steps. Sometimes they get a good deal. They have to come in and be pre-approved, and it's interesting. But okay, he's got an interesting theory here. And then what? Then they put the cut-up hat and the cut-up sneaker in your house? Okay. All right. See where this is going.
Weeks before Mr. Gervin's first article.
So she's in on it too,
So the
Rita.
investigation into Compass Realty went nowhere, and later when I continued my work against Compass Realty, Detective Jaffe opened a sham investigation into me, complete with surveillance. And this was just a little bit before, a little less than a month before someone murdered Mr. Gervin. You can see why maybe Mr. Wolfson wants to be convicted at all costs. Why he wouldn't mind it, or why he made Weckerly and Hamner lie and break the law to convict me. Now, I imagine that he didn't want me to discover and expose that Adam Fenn, the man that we were all trying to work together to build a case against, was giving him a donation. Interestingly, another attorney told me that Wolfson had been known to take donations in exchange for leniency. And I checked a handful of names on Wolfson's second quarter report and found that donors Sol Sayed and Leonard Ambrosino had both been convicted by Mr. Wolfson in the past. It's kind of strange that these gentlemen would donate to the man that convicted them year after year. And the attorney that told me about this leniency in exchange for donations told me that Paris Hilton was one of the most famous examples of this. Now, I didn't get to check that, but if the records...
Leniency in exchange for donations. And then the closeout caption said that Paris Hilton is the best example of that. And I don't think that Paris Hilton is an example of that, but let's see if we can hear that it was someone other than Paris Hilton, because that would be that Paris Hilton was not on my bingo card today.
That convicted them year after year. And the attorney that told me about this leniency in exchange for donations told me that Paris Hilton was one of the most famous examples of this. Now, I didn't get to check.
It kind of sounded like Paris Hilton. Anybody else hear that? I got to do that one more time. Hold on a second. Paris Hilton got leniency for donations in Las Vegas? What? Definitely sounds like Paris Hilton, right? Paris Hilton doesn't have time for this. CW, I try not to curse on this stream, so I'm just going to delete that. But that was kind of funny. Oh, somebody got to it before me. Heard Paris Hilton. All right, we're going to have to look into now. This is like another rabbit hole for me, you guys. Now I'm going to find out what Paris Hilton has to do with Las Vegas and donating to a DA who absolutely gave her leniency. Okay. Paris Hilton has entered the chat. If you have not watched it, there's an amazing documentary on YouTube about Paris Hilton. And she does live in Vegas. What? Thanks, Ann Higgins. I'm going to digress for a second because we need to let Boss Baby rest his mouth for a second before I get him his binky. That's hot. Neil Campbell's like, that's hot. There's an amazing documentary on YouTube. Tell me if you've seen it. It's about Paris Hilton and all of the stuff that she went to when her parents sent her away to these troubled teen camps when she was like, since the time she was 15 years old. And the horrors that she went to at these troubled teen camps, and she has exposed them, and she's testified in front of Congress, and she's trying to change laws about this unregulated troubled teen industry. And her parents would send her to these places because they couldn't handle her. And she was thrown into like solitary confinement, thrown into a pit. She was abused, essayed. She was physically abused. She, at one point, I think during the documentary, she reconnects with some of these girls that she was in this troubled teen camp with. And there were more than one of them. I think one of them was in Utah. And even though she was a Hilton, she didn't grow up with a ton of money. Her father was like the black sheep of the Hilton family, and all the other siblings got the Hilton money, and she did not. And they did not grow up wealthy. And just because she was like living, I guess it was in the 80s, going to clubs when she was like in her teens, her parents couldn't handle her and sent her to these places where she was horrifically abused. And she said to herself while she was in the hole one day, like this pit, they would strip them naked and throw them in there for like a week. It was horrible. It was horrible. The documentary is amazing. Go watch it. It gave me a whole new respect for Paris Hilton. She said to herself while she was in that pit in solitary confinement, I will never, ever, ever be in this position again. I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to make my own money. I'm going to make my own way, and I will never, ever, ever have to be in this situation in my life. And she did. She is self-made. All of the money that she has is from herself. She was really the first influencer. I mean, she was the one who would take the the selfies and do the things before anybody else was doing it. Like, she made Kim Kardashian. She did. She used to run around with Nicole Richie, and they did that dopey reality show. I don't know the name of it. Just search up Paris Hilton documentary on YouTube. Maybe I'll find it. And they did that dopey reality show where Paris dumbed herself down and she acted really stupid, and she's not. She's really smart. She's really intelligent. She's had troubles having relationships because obviously when you go through that kind of childhood trauma, how can you ever trust anyone again in your life? She's now happily married. I think she has 1 or 2 kids, and she is finally living the life that she deserved. But that poor girl went through so much trauma. And she was tortured, absolutely 100%. And it's horrific. She escaped from 1 or 2 of those troubled teen camps. And it's fascinating. It's a fascinating watch. I'll see if I can find it and link it. She did not always have money. They did not grow up wealthy. They were the black sheep of the Hilton family. Everything she has, she made herself. Truth. All right. We're going to get back to that. It is an incredible story. I don't think it's called Simple Life. I think wasn't Simple Life the name of the show she did with Nicole Richie? That's not the documentary. It's not the documentary. All right, let's get back to him. There's only a minute. There's a minute left in this piece from Long Crime, but that Paris Hilton documentary is a great watch.
These gentlemen would donate to the man that convicted them year after year. And the attorney that told me about this leniency in exchange for donations told me that Paris Hilton was one of the most famous examples of this. Now, I didn't get the check.
Dude, I don't want to argue with you in the chat. Dude, Gage, I don't want to argue with you in the chat. She is self-made 100%. She has started companies. She has started fashion lines, makeup lines, perfume lines. I don't know if anybody wants to school Gage. She's not an heiress. Dude, this branch of the Hilton family was cut off from the money. I'm not going to argue with you during my show, but she's not. All of her money was made by her. It's called This Is Paris. Go watch it and maybe you can learn the facts. She's not. Her father was like the 5th child in the Hilton family, and he was not part of the family that had the money. Okay? Thank you. It's called This is Paris. Thank you. Oh, you know what? I'll link it in the description below. Thank you. I love when people come in the chat and try to argue with me. Like, dude, it's my show. Don't make shit up. Yeah, her dad was the black sheep. Thank you, Shopaholic. I see some of you have watched this actual documentary. Okay?
From back then are available, then I'm sure that it can be easily checked out. So this is Steve Wolfson's reason for withholding evidence, for trying to break every rule in the book. And I believe that Judge Leavitt knows it. I believe that Judge Leavitt wants to protect him. And I think they didn't want me to find this information out. So, I mean, what else really explains her deep-seated favoritism and these numerous overt acts of misconduct, Your Honor? There's nothing, it's extreme what she's done. It's inexcusable. And Your Honor, I believe that if you do not disqualify Judge Leavitt, respectfully, I think that it's going to send a message that, you know, money can buy anything, even the wrongful conviction of an innocent man who's just trying to stop crime. So in order to protect my constitutional rights to prove my innocence, Your Honor, I'd like to ask you to please disqualify Judge Leavitt. And as far as those reports, I've got copies here if you'd like to see them.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Well, that's a little taste of our defendant. That's who we're going to see in court. But he is now represented by counsel. Great Dane Mom says, my bestie from Massapequa dated Barron Hilton in the 80s. That was crazy times growing up in Vegas. Was off the charts. Massapequa. Rex Heuermann, accused Long Island serial killers from Massapequa as well. And I'm going to digress for another second here because guess what? It's my show. I can do whatever the hell I want, right? Massapequa, Long Island serial killer vibes brings me to the next thing that I learned yesterday. Do you remember when we went back, those of you who have been following me for a while, and we did some of the cold cases from the 80s, and we were trying to figure out whether Rex Heuermann could be responsible for some of those cold cases during the 80s. And there were a lot of girls that went missing during that time from the Lynbrook area on the South Shore of Long Island, and many of them hung out at Hot Skates. Do you remember that? The roller rink? So I'm listening to a podcast yesterday by Bethany Frankel, who I have a whole new respect for too, because she had a horrible childhood and a horrible life, and she was severely abused by her mother. And it was the podcast where her mother died. And she was very emotional during this podcast, and she was talking about all the horrible things that happened to her as a child. And she said her mother used to drop her off at Hot Skates every single day at 9 a.m. And she would be there all day into the night for all of the roller skating videos. I mean, all the roller skating open sessions. I was like, wow, Bethany Frankel has a Hot Skates connection. Like, I want to reach out to her and ask her if she knew any of those girls who worked at Hot Skates and lived at Hot Skates too, and whether she knew any of them. Because that's crazy, right? Right? Highly recommend that podcast as well. It's on YouTube. Bethany Frankel, and it's something like My Mother Just Died or something like that. It was really sad and really tragic. And as Travis, who is or was a Las Vegas attorney, has pointed out to us, this case also has an interesting twist with some First Amendment issues, which we touched on briefly the other day. But I'm going to play for you a news piece from my favorite channel, KTNV, Channel 13, Las Vegas. And there were some First Amendment issues here because defense wanted to get a hold of Jeff Gehrman's devices to see if they had any exculpatory evidence in them. And so there was a lot of litigation about this and regarding whether journalistic privilege dies with the journalist. And the Las Vegas Review Journal came into court and said, listen, just because he's dead doesn't mean the privilege dies. And it doesn't mean that his sources can be revealed. And so they went through some litigation to try and get a hold of his devices. And we will listen to my favorite news station, KTNV Channel 13 Las Vegas, talk a little bit about that. This is a short piece, but it brings all of the First Amendment issues in the case and gives them just a little light. And this was just posted 2 days ago. Look at us getting current with our news pieces. Okay, and here we go.
While this case has captivated national attention, every day I come to work here, it reminds me just how close to home it hits, not only for me as an investigative reporter, but also for all of my Las Vegas media colleagues. It impacts how we do our job and the privacy of those we work with.
This set a legal precedent nationwide.
Should police investigators be allowed to search a journalist's devices after the journalist has died? That question led to months of litigation in a Clark County courtroom where the role of the press in a democratic society took center stage.
They uncover wrongdoing. A lot of that wrongdoing is going on in the government, it's going on in corporations, it's going on by powerful individuals. And that's a big piece of what our press does, protecting us from corruption and wrongdoing in these places of power is because people who are in a position to know come forward to the press confidentially with that information, with the promise that the reporter will not reveal who they are.
Because of that, the law protects unpublished information journalists gather to create news stories. The district attorney and Metro Police argued that in this case, they took Jeff Gehrman's phone and laptop computers because they believed information on the devices could help with the investigation into his death. But according to Kissinger, no matter the reason, taking the devices in the first place violated both state and federal law.
The police department should never have seized those devices. I think they knew they shouldn't have because they very immediately came to the newspaper and asked for permission to search the devices.
The RJ said such a search could expose sensitive information and put confidential sources in danger.
We know that he had sources within the police department itself, within the prosecutor's office, Clark County DA's office, even within the courthouse, within the judicial system, and in the public defender's office. And at that time, Mr. Tellis was represented by the public defender.
Kissinger says the newspaper has been willing all along to work with law enforcement and get them information that's not privileged, even proposing to have special masters look at the devices to decide what to release. But she says that offer was declined.
They basically took the position that we had no rights to assert. We had no privilege in this information at all. It was personal to Mr. Gehrman, and Mr. Gehrman was now dead, even though everything Mr. Gehrman was doing was for the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
While Nevada does have a shield law, it uses terms like reporter, employee, and former reporter, which prosecutors argued only applied to Gehrman as a person and not the Review-Journal as a media company.
If the reporter dies, it's really the news organization or organizations that the reporter is working for who needs to protect this information. It's not like the need to protect it doesn't go away. If they learn that, oh yeah, even though there was this sensitive confidential source information, they had to give it over though because there was a homicide case, again, that's going to affect not just this one homicide case, it's going to affect a whole lot of public reporting that may not happen in the future because you scared people into silence.
The Nevada Supreme Court ultimately ruled in favor of the Review-Journal.
When the state and Metro lost in the Nevada Supreme Court, they said to us, hey, you know what, Review-Journal, you can just review it yourselves, which honestly, if that's the case, that should have happened in September, October of 2022, not right now in 2024.
Kissinger says the news.
So that's interesting that they allowed the Las Vegas Review-Journal to go through their devices themselves instead of hiring something like a taint team or having the court look at them in camera. And this is interesting too, because you may note that Massachusetts doesn't have a journalistic privilege. And yeah, SNS, they are protecting the sources and ensuring the integrity of journalism. And isn't that what First Amendment rights are based on, right? So they're going to turn over all that stuff today, which is what the hearing's going to be about. And that's going to be at 1 p.m. Pacific and Mountain, because apparently everyone has told me that Mountain Time does not abide by daylight savings time. So they are now on Pacific time. So it's going to be 4 p.m.
Paper began
4 p.m. Eastern. And there will be a hearing, and Law and Crime has it up. So we're going to come back for that. So let's listen to the rest of this.
its review in February. While 6 devices were seized, all parties agreed that only 2 should be looked at, Gehrman's phone and the computer with the most recent data on it. She says they're on track to give the last batch of evidence to the defense on Monday.
There is information being given over that's relevant to the criminal case. Not all of it. There are certain items that we had to stand on privilege for, even though it did relate to the Telus case.
While Nevada has a shield law to protect sources, there are 2 exceptions. One is if the journalist is accused of criminal conduct and the materials being seized relate to that accusation. With Jeff Gehrman, that's clearly not the case. He's a victim. The other exception is if there's a risk of serious bodily injury if the materials are not seized. That is also not the situation here. Absent any last-minute rulings or delays, Robert Tellis' trial is scheduled to start with jury selection on Monday afternoon. In the newsroom, Darcy Spears, 13 Investigates.
All right. In the newsroom, Darcy Spears, loving that channel, loving their information. They've done some really great investigative reporting on this. It's nice to see that journalistic privilege is alive and well and sources are being protected, at least in Nevada. At least in Nevada, they are. Thank you, Pilgrim Shadow, who says, hello, everyone. If you pray, remember to say a prayer for Ashley today. Peace be with everyone here today. It seems like all this life was just a dream. Thank you, Pilgrim Shadow, for the Grateful Dead quote of the day and for always being so kind and generous with your super chats and just your overall vibe. Kindness Cake, thank you. Says, thank you. This guy has the most slappable face I've seen in a long time. May justice prevail. Thanks for your super chat, Laura. I like this comment, so I highlighted it. The judge knew he was a bad guy because she saw his true colors. Cyndi Lauper style. That is awesome. Think of some emojis for this trial, you guys. So far, I have a straw hat that somebody so kindly suggested. Karen, there are videos of him before his arrest. We looked at them in part 1 of this series, which you can go back and watch until we come back a little bit later for the 4 p.m. hearing. And yes, you can see his baseline when not under pressure. And I think we did show some at the beginning of this stream, didn't we, my friends? She says this man is very deceptive with his expressions and uses his entire head. Travis, our in-house attorney from Nevada, says, yes, I was admitted in Nevada in 86 and practiced there until 97, moved to Texas. At the time Jeff covered courts, Jeff Gehrman, the victim in this case, especially organized crime, public corruption, etc. Yes, in fact, he covered Tony, the aunt, Spilatro, who was made into a movie, Casino, in 1995, and Joe Pesci played that role, Tony Spilatro. He reported on that guy. So it's ironic that his death would be caused by either Rob Tellis, attorney and counselor at law, public administrator, toxic boss baby, and or Compass Realty, when he was used to covering the craziest organized crime figures and exposing a lot of things. Travis says there were 88 journalists murdered in 2022 in connection with their work worldwide. There's 1 reporter murdered in the U.S. in 2022 for this case. That is frightening. Thank you, MK, for becoming a new member. And thank you, Sarah D, for your super sticker. You are so very kind and generous. BK says, are there cell phone records of his whereabouts? He left his cell phone at home. But what he didn't leave at home was his wife's car. And I think the GPS data is going to show that his wife's car went to Gehrman's house and then back to the Tellis house on the day of the murder. Because remember, this was in broad daylight. It was something like 11:18 a.m. when this heinous crime was committed in broad daylight. And then, yeah. And then it was, I think, not until a day later that Gehrman's body was sadly found when it was on the side of the house, I think He was attacked by whoever this was, this person outside and found on the side of his house. But we're going to find out more about that. Mandy says, Boss Baby is the most epic and appropriate title for this case. Sorry to Pixar, but Tellus looks and acts just like him. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I put it on my thumbnail. I thought it was funny because we're going to try and find some humor in this trial, my friends, because the last two trials that we watched together, Karen Rita and Ashley Benefield, not funny. I mean, especially the results were not, none of it was funny. This is going to be our palate cleanser of a trial. So that's what we're going to do. The irony says, hi, Fairy Raven, all the way to Ireland. It's going to be late for you, but I think it's going to be worth it. Somebody keeps pointing out that Lauren from a different channel is going to be in court, that she was called in for jury duty today. I thought they lived in Utah. I don't think she's going to come on my channel to cover it because I think she's probably going to cover it on her own channel. But thank you for pointing that out a couple of times in the chat. It would be interesting if she was chosen to be a juror on this case, wouldn't it? Very, very funny. Okay, here's what we're going to do. It is 1:43 Eastern. We're going to come back at 3:50 p.m. Eastern time. So a little more than 2 hours from now for the afternoon stream where we will cover the hearing live. When I hit end on this stream, it's going to teleport you over to the new stream. And so you will hit the notification bell so that you can come back at the proper time, or you can say hi in the chat to each other respectfully. So thank you so very much for my mods for keeping it classy today. Let's see if we can get a Boss Baby emoji too in there for members before that, because members have access to special emojis for the trials that we cover. And that's how it goes. So thank you so much for the moderators for keeping it classy this morning. I hope it wasn't too hard. And please hit like. Thank you, Scott Messerschmidt. To push the video out. Thank you so very much to my members. Thank you so much for wanting to be a member of my channel. And thank you so much to the viewers and replay viewers. And if you would do the YouTube-ish things and hit subscribe, it's free. We're coming back at 3:50 p.m. Eastern for the afternoon stream, including the hearing that we're going to hear today. Then we're going to roll right into jury selection and opening statements, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. So we'll see how that goes with regard to the coverage on that, but it's our next trial and we're here for it. All right, everyone, as I always say to end every stream, be cool, be kind, be classy. So not hard, really so not hard. Safe travels over to the afternoon stream, and I'll see you in a little over 2 hours from now. You won't want to miss it. Peace out.